One Timothy was pretty sure the entire world hated him. The streets of this cozy mountain town looked peaceful. It was bustling with normal people going about their daily business. Whenever neighbors crossed paths, they would smile, ask how they were doing, and strike up a warm little conversation. A little girl was running down the cobblestone street, trying to catch up with her mother. The mom turned around and gently warned her not to run, worried she might fall, but that warm atmosphere instantly vanished. The second Timothy walked past. Mothers quickly pulled their children close, while the other adults took a few hurried steps back to keep their distance. Everyone tried their absolute best to ignore the boy in the ragged cloak carrying a heavy sack. Whispers filled the air. They all called him the creepy corpse collector. But Timothy just ignored the hushed voices and those cold, judging stares. He kept walking, heading straight toward a local merchant shop. The owner was already busy with customers and immediately demanded to know why the creepy corpse collector was bothering him today. Hearing that, the other buyers scrambled to leave. No one wanted to share a room with him. Timothy did not care. He had come here for one thing: to sell his harvest. He dumped a pile of looted jewelry onto the counter, but the shopkeeper just sneered, calling the valuable items worthless trash. He threw a few measly bronze coins onto the wood, with total contempt, telling Timothy to take his scraps and get out. The boy was stunned. This was barely 20% of what the items were actually worth. He asked why, but the merchant had absolutely no intention of giving him a real answer. Instead, he spat that a lowly corpse collector had no right to question him. Honestly, this world is brutal. Deadly danger literally lurks around every single corner. Vicious monsters could strike at any moment, but luckily, humanity has defenders. The brave souls who hunt beasts, people call them adventurers. The elite ones slay massive beasts daily, harvesting rare loot to level up. Even a tiny gap in levels means an astronomical difference in pure power. Level is absolute. In this world, Timothy is stuck at level 1. Taking his pathetic handful of bronze coins, the boy headed over to the marketplace. He stopped by a familiar old baker's stall to buy some basic bread, just like always. The old man smiled warmly, handing over a wrapped package of unsold bread. This kind of charity happened quite often, and though Timothy felt bad, he was truly starving. Complaining would be ungrateful, so he simply paid the meager price and thanked him. The old baker gently suggested that maybe it was time to find a different career, to give up adventuring, but Timothy simply could not do it. Everyone knew his name. He was the creepy corpse collector. No regular shop would ever hire him. Besides, he had always dreamed of being an adventurer. But here is the catch: his dream immediately turned into a zero-experience nightmare. It was a highly unusual skill, though in reality it was a permanent curse. No matter how hard he fought, he literally could not gain any experience. His level remained frozen. He was destined to stay weak. Yet, even with this broken system holding him back, Timothy refused to quit. He kept a tiny sliver of hope that one day he would break through. But the system was completely merciless. Eventually, his unwavering faith began to crumble. He gave up on combat and turned to scavenging dead monster parts instead. Instead of fighting them himself, he let real warriors do the dirty work. After other hunters, which is how Timothy became a corpse collector, those level 1 monster materials sold for absolute pennies, forcing him to search for much better prey, but simply grabbing scraps behind other adventurers was never going to sustain his miserable life. Lost in these stressful thoughts, he completely failed to notice a group of rookie fighters heading his way. He bumped right into them and stumbled, losing his balance. Grasping at thin air, his only piece of bread slipped away as he hit the dirt. The leader of the party ground his heel into that ruined bread, Timothy's entire evening meal, while sneering at the pathetic corpse collector lying before him. The smug party surrounded the poor guy, laughing at his miserable state. Everyone in this town knew him by that filthy nickname. Because of that rotten reputation, he could never get hired for decent work. He constantly wondered why life was this brutal. Yet no matter how much they spat on him, he had to keep digging through rotting monsters, otherwise starvation would claim him, creeping deeper into a damp goblin. Then Timothy prayed he would finally stumble upon something actually valuable. Then a putrid, overwhelming stench hit his nose. He looked up to see a massive dragon carcass rotting right before his eyes. Creeping closer, he guessed this legendary beast was at least level 200, but now was no time for awe. He needed to salvage those materials immediately to make some Serious coin. Inspecting the gargantuan frame, the young man quickly realized that the most valuable scales and claws were already stripped away, leaving only a foul, bloated internal organ. It was a nasty bile sac common in these high-tier beasts. Normal hunters avoided touching them entirely due to the rancid, unbearable stench inside. But Timothy was desperate. Filth was his daily bread, so he sliced it open anyway, and immediately felt something hard wedged deep inside the black sludge. The boy carved a wider opening and, to his absolute shock, pulled out a set of armor. The moment those pieces tore free from the decaying flesh, the entire dark cavern violently erupted with crackling red lightning. Trust me, this looks incredibly bad. He knew he stood absolutely zero chance of surviving whatever was coming when a commanding voice echoed in his mind, ordering him to wear the gear. This strange whisper was originating straight from the armor itself, screaming danger and telling him to run far away. But as the terrified kid scrambled back toward the narrow cave entrance, his heart sank. A pack of savage goblins stood there, weapons drawn and ready to slaughter him. He had no clue where they came from. Apparently, he was a pretty careless corpse collector. Bracing for a brutal fight, he quickly realized that his enemies were roughly around his level, but he lacked any decent armor or weapons. Screeching, the green monsters charged at him. Timothy knew he was completely done for. Was he seriously about to die like a dog here, after accomplishing absolutely nothing? The thought of dying in a dark, smelly hole made him sick, but then an unseen force shoved him backward, directly into the heavy armor, as that voice rang in his skull again. It demanded he put it on, and with no other options left, Timothy figured he had nothing to lose. He was dead anyway. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he accepted the armor, because anything was better than getting torn apart by those hideous pests. Instantly, the system logged his consent and immediately initiated a high-speed auto-equip sequence. Stunned, Timothy could only stare as the glowing gear began to wrap around him. Lightning crackled directly toward him, wrapping around his body. Seconds later, right in front of the stunned goblins, the young man stood clad in dark abyss armor, completely ready for battle. Timothy stared at the dark metal, doubting it. The dark breastplate suddenly spoke, promising to follow the young man's commands unconditionally. To face the oncoming horde, Timothy trusted it. His old sword had been lost, but his current blade felt far superior. Timothy realized the heavy sword was his only hope. He held a real weapon now. Nearby goblins matched his level, but with this powerful sword in hand, everything changed. The young corpse collector actually stood a fighting chance. He slashed two enemies. Suddenly, a strange, overwhelming surge of raw power began flooding straight through his dark armor. Timothy could not understand why, but with each kill, his body felt lighter. His entire body felt lighter. He became stronger, as if this form was not his. Finally believing that he could actually survive this, the young man roared out in pure defiance. All of them would die. When the battle ended, a bizarre light appeared. A glowing mist slowly rose from the dead beasts, sinking directly into Timothy's dark armor. Before he could even process the glowing screen, a system message flashed. His level had actually increased, and staring at the floating notification, Timothy stood frozen in sheer disbelief. The detailed text confirmed that the master of the armor had achieved a massive leap. Timothy had officially reached level 6. It was hard to process the news. For the longest time, Timothy was stuck at level 1, entirely unable to gain a single experience point. He looked at the scattered monster remains, wondering what this truly meant. Looking around at the bodies, he desperately wondered how a weak corpse collector could achieve this. The system quickly explained that the abyss armor granted him a unique skill. He was now fully able to absorb raw power directly from his fallen foes in combat. Dark armor literally stole levels from dead enemies, bypassing normal rules. It was not some crazy trick of his mind. He was truly growing stronger and faster. Every movement had become sharper, every strike carrying a massive weight. In a single, bloody battle, the young corpse collector had managed to gain 5 whole levels. The young man was overwhelmed with sheer joy, an absolute miracle. His lifelong dream of finally becoming a true warrior was actually unfolding right before his eyes. The heavy stench in the cave was terrible, but he barely cared. Thanks to this dragon's legendary power, the young man was finally able to level up. Timothy realized that if he cleared out every single monster in this cave, he could grow to unimaginable heights. Pressing his hand against his chest, Timothy began to calculate his next move. With this high-tier defense on his side, these weak beasts could not even scratch him. If he utilized this living gear to its absolute limit, victory was guaranteed. By slaughtering every remaining creature in this cavern, he could easily achieve his main goal. Suddenly, his ambitious thoughts were cut short by an icy, creeping sensation. He failed to notice the massive, terrifying predator that was creeping up silently directly behind him. Turning slowly, Timothy stared up at a truly massive fiend. This made no sense. Low-level dungeons like this never housed such terrifying threats. Yet his eyes did not deceive him. He was staring directly at a towering, terrifying goblin lord. The towering beast was flanked by a group of heavily armed minions. How could a level 35 boss beast end up guarding a simple beginner dungeon cave? Severe panic set in, and Timothy realized he urgently needed to run for his life. But right behind him, tiny goblins were already tearing into the dead dragon. Our boy realized these vile pests were drawn to the scent of fresh blood, while his system warned him to run away. Timothy knew he had to move, but escaping was pretty much impossible. Every path was blocked, and that is when the Goblin Lord launched his assault. He had no choice but to brace himself and try to block the crushing blow. Timothy pushed back with all his strength, but struggling was totally useless. The monster was simply too powerful and sent him crashing deep into the cave. Standing back up was pure agony, but Timothy had to force himself. This monster had an overwhelming aura, even though he managed to gain a level. He was still completely outclassed, and bitter tears of frustration welled up. Making a desperate break for it, he ran as fast as he could. He sprinted wild and hard toward the main exit of this dark cavern. Only to find the Goblin Lord's horde standing guard, he was cornered. Maybe he could hide and wait them out, but there was no time. A stray monster suddenly leaped straight at his face, blade in hand. That is when he saw this particular beast was only level 1. Timothy grabbed its head and smashed it directly into the stone ceiling. The weak creature died instantly. Right then, a harsh truth clicked in his mind. In this ruthless world, absolute power and level are all that matter. Even a brainless monster has to recognize a gap in raw strength. Suddenly, his system chimed with a notification that he absorbed the level. Timothy instantly shot up to level 7. Now things are getting interesting. If he can keep farming these stats, he might actually survive. It is kill or be killed. Timothy dives headfirst into the chaotic horde. The level 1 pests are absolutely no match for his newly found strength. Within minutes, the cavern goes silent, leaving only the strongest standing. Moving deeper in, he knows that only those with high levels survive. The weak have no choice but to bend to the absolute strong. It is a brutal lesson he had to learn the hard way. Timothy absorbs more essence and shoots straight up to level 15. Wandering further down the path, he notices a strangely glowing side cavern. His system prompts him to check it out, so he follows the guide. Just a few moments later, he discovers a massive hoard of treasure. Staring at the piles of gold, he realizes the monsters stole all this. Ordinary humans could never handle even the lowest level monsters in here. But there has got to be something useful hidden in these piles. Searching through the gold, Timothy spots a solid chest sitting in the back. He pops it open, and the system identifies the contents as health potions. Pulling out a glass vial, he confirms they are indeed high-grade elixirs. These will be perfect for his upcoming battle. He makes a quick decision. Instantly, a prompt informs him that his armor has built-in potion slots. With a flash, every single bottle snaps neatly onto his tactical belt. This makes things incredibly convenient, and he is deeply grateful for the help. With his new supplies, he is ready to take on whatever lies ahead. He wanted to take some gold with him, but that extra weight would only slow him down. Especially in a life-or-death fight with the boss, his main goal was simple: get back to the city alive. If he made it, Timothy could easily strike it rich by selling rare monster materials. Clearing his head, he realized there was no time to lose. It was time to move. He moved forward, but just as he almost reached the exit, a faint voice echoed through the dark. Curious, he decided to follow the sound. Peeking behind a dusty wooden crate, he gasped. A young girl was bound tight. She was the one desperately crying out. It seemed those filthy goblins were kidnapping kids too. Seeing a human face after so much terror, tears flooded the girl's eyes. She begged him not to leave her. Timothy rushed over to cut her free. He muttered that she was incredibly lucky he had passed by, pulling the gag from her mouth. The girl introduced herself as Lindsay, sobbing that she belonged to a village close by. She thanked him from the bottom of her heart. Shivering, she crossed her arms tightly. She stammered out a shy question, asking for his name, but when he answered, Timothy, Lindsay flinched in shock. He asked if she had heard of the corpse collector. The girl whispered a tiny apology, admitting she had heard the awful gossip. People said terrible things about him, but looking at him now, those rumors felt completely wrong. Even if the town talked trash, this boy was nothing like the monster they described. Lindsay stepped closer, looking straight into his tired eyes. She spoke softly. He was different because he had saved her. To her, he did not look like some grim collector. Hearing those words struck Timothy right in the chest. Someone actually saw him. Before he could even process it, she beamed and called him a true hero. Timothy's heart soared. He had always dreamed of being an adventurer who saves lives. And finally, here it was. He gently told the trembling girl to stand up. He promised her that he would get her back to her village safely. Lindsay stared at him, momentarily stunned, but in that brief second, Timothy felt a quiet wave of happiness. Finally, someone actually needed him. A few minutes later, his expression hardened. He told Lindsay to hide behind a nearby boulder. Thanks to his powerful armor, he could sense incoming danger. Goblins were approaching. Within seconds, he realized this was definitely not just a small scouting party. The monsters had spotted them too. Scanning the dark tunnel, he counted their numbers. There were roughly 20 enemies, but every single one of them was only level 1. Compared to his own level 15, it was a joke. He smirked, telling them to get ready to match his power. Then chaos erupted. This is where the real action starts. A brutal, bloody clash kicked off right then. With every goblin Timothy slaughtered, his level began to climb. Level absorption was incredibly broken. He was swinging faster and moving lighter. Strength flooded his veins. Suddenly, 4 goblins lunged at him from the shadows. They tried to ambush him from behind while he was distracted. It was a cheap surprise attack, but to Timothy, their movements were painfully slow. Before their weapons could even graze him, he leaped high into the air. A split second later, he brought down absolute hell from above, crushing them. They had absolutely no defense. Soon, only a handful of terrified monsters remained. The tunnel went quiet as the system chimed to confirm his new level. It took a moment to calculate the massive body count he left behind. Finally, the system alerts him that he has hit level 35. Lindsay steps out from a side tunnel, asking if it is safe to join him, but Timothy warns her to remain hidden. The young warrior has already spilled plenty of the Goblin Lord's blood. Now he has finally made his way to the boss. The monster is absolutely furious. Radiating a terrifying aura, it raises a massive fist, breathing out dark smoke. Timothy readies his blade. They are standing at the exact same level now. The boy shouts out. He is no longer the weakling from their very first encounter. The furious boss responds by lifting a massive cleaver high above its head. But Timothy warns him, do not expect an easy meal today. He lunges forward, driving his sharp blade deep into the monster's ribs. A painful shriek echoes through the cave. Suddenly, hordes of small goblins crawl out from the shadows, hissing with pure rage at Timothy. A quick glance reveals 10 enemies total, but with the leader still breathing. Timothy refuses to waste his energy on small fry. He spots Lindsay nearby and calls out to her, telling the girl to throw him the daggers. She hurls the weapons, along with her entire utility belt, directly toward him. The belt spins, releasing the sharp knives to scatter wildly through the air. They rain down haphazardly toward Timothy and the circling monsters. Lindsay gasps, screaming out a frantic apology for her mistake. She realizes the danger a second too late, yet, to her absolute shock, Timothy calmly tells her not to sweat it. Everything is completely under control. Plucking 2 blades right from the air, he slashes through his attackers. He is a blur, snatching the falling daggers. Before they can even touch the floor, every thrown blade hits a mark. Nobody present can keep up with his blinding movements. His velocity keeps scaling up, leaving the enemy totally helpless. Low-level goblins stand zero chance against this kind of supernatural pace. Clutching 6 daggers between his knuckles, Timothy whispers that they are out of luck. They made a massive mistake stepping into his path today. Trying to save their leader only sealed their own doom in a flash. The 6 weapons fly outward, dropping the remaining monsters instantly. With only the boss left, the system congratulates him on another massive jump. He has reached level 45. Instantly, the enraged lord lunges from behind. But with his higher level, Timothy possesses a massive raw power advantage. But get this, the boss is not going down that easily. It unleashes a relentless barrage of heavy blows, overpowering him. Struggling under the crushing pressure, the young warrior is completely baffled. Then a warning flashes from his armor. The boss has a power-up. A specialized bracelet is boosting the monster's combat statistics. It catches him completely off guard. Raising stats is usually a grueling process. Players rely heavily on rare gear to bridge the gap. But up until this very moment, he never once imagined that monsters could also equip powerful items. No time to complain, though. He knows exactly what must be done. He has to shatter the accessory, keeping the brutal boss alive. It was not going to be that simple. The beast realized killing Timothy would take some real effort. No holding back anymore. This time, he would have to go completely all out. Timothy braced for a counter, ready to unleash all his strength. He channeled his armor's energy for this throw. Suddenly, the former corpse collector charged ahead. He threw himself at the goblin lord, aiming for a cheeky surprise attack. But the trick fell flat. The giant boss easily read the kid's movement. He slammed Timothy deep into the cave, but this fight was far from over. Landing hard, the boy noticed he was right next to the goblin corpses from earlier. Their daggers were still sticking out of them. Instantly, Timothy grabbed both blades. With weapons back in hand, he sprinted straight toward the massive boss again. Midway through his run, he launched both daggers as a quick distraction. As the monster smirked and batted the daggers away, the boy formulated a plan. He pushed himself to the absolute limit, charging directly at the goblin lord. He prepped for a massive jump, targeting the bracelet on the giant's arm. He yelled out that he told him so from the start. His real target was that bracelet. He snatched it, instantly neutralizing the item's magical effects. The stunned monster stood frozen, completely unable to process what just happened. When they first met at the entrance, Timothy was just a weak, useless kid. But now the tables have turned. Timothy is leagues stronger than this beast. This time it's the giant who needs to run for his life. He stared down the monster and told him to give it his best shot. As the giant hesitated, the boy raised his sword, ready to strike. He went on the offensive. The boss managed to block the initial slash. For a split second, the boss genuinely believed that defending this would be an easy task. But Timothy overpowered him, launching the massive giant deep into the cave. The beast slammed hard against the stone wall. Timothy wasn't about to let him breathe. He mocked the boss, asking if he was scared, and honestly, he should be. With a ferocious strike, the boy shattered the giant's hold on his massive cleaver. The weapon went flying. Timothy knew that defeating this boss meant permanent freedom. No more weakness, ever, but the Lord of the Goblins wasn't done yet. The absolute ruler of this cave refused to surrender, rearing back for one last strike. He swung his massive fist forward with everything he had. To Timothy, this final struggle was completely useless. He swung for the throat. A clean, fatal slice right to the neck. Just like that, the boss collapsed. Timothy thanked the fallen giant. This brutal fight had pushed his limits even further. Right on cue, the game system pinged with a massive level up notification. His level instantly shot up to level 80. Timothy turned toward Lindsay's hiding spot, calling out that it was safe to emerge. She crept out cautiously, staring at the massive corpse in absolute disbelief. She couldn't believe a kid like him actually took down the dungeon's boss. Once she realized she was completely safe, she smiled. She declared that Timothy was easily the strongest adventurer around here. Now for the best part, Timothy began harvesting the boss's loot. He carved out a massive fang. He never dreamed he'd hold such rare materials. But just as he admired his prize, Lindsay noticed something else nearby. Lindsay assured Timothy he did not need to worry, offering to carry all his loot. Slowly, the collector's bag filled up. Packed inside were the goblin lord's blade and the cursed bone. Timothy offered his sincere thanks. Nobody had ever helped him before. Lindsay just smiled, telling him not to worry. Saving her life was a big deal, so this was the least she could do. But she still worried about what to do with the massive boss corpse. Timothy knew his rare loot was safely stored. He could finally return to the village, but leaving the remaining goblins behind. That only meant more innocent villagers would get snatched away in the future. He had to end this, so he asked Lindsay to stay with him just a bit longer. Curious, she looked at him and asked where exactly they were going next. Timothy made his stance clear. He would never let these monsters kidnap anyone else. Every single beast left in this dark cave was going to be wiped out. With the enemies wiped out, he finally guided her back home. It was time to head home. By now, Timothy had reached level 100. Starting at level 1, his explosive growth was hard to believe. At level 100, almost no common monster in this region could touch him. Feeling a deep sense of pride, Timothy smiled at how far he had come. He proudly declared that he was finally a real adventurer, and honestly, he earned it. Walking a step behind, Lindsay asked what he just muttered. She darted right in front of him. She looked him dead in the eye and yelled that 3-digit levels were unheard of. To her, Timothy was easily the strongest adventurer in the village. He agreed, though her words got him thinking about things. Honestly, he could not recall ever hearing of an adventurer reaching this high level. His unique ability actually allowed him to directly absorb levels from defeated foes. He told Lindsay not to worry, admitting he was completely shocked when it first happened. This revelation was all she needed to fire up. Now she knew there was literally no limit to how strong he could get. Smiling brightly, she clutched her hands tightly to her chest in pure excitement. She promised she would be rooting for him every step of the way. But their sweet conversation was suddenly cut short by a group of rude adventurers. Their leader, Michael, immediately sneered at the corpse collector. Michael demanded to know where a trash collector managed to steal such armor. He mocked Timothy, asking if he was compensating for being unable to level up. To Michael, he was still just trash, even in nice gear. He sneered that Timothy would always remain a completely useless level 1 weakling. No amount of high-tier equipment could ever bridge their massive level gap. Talk about a massive ego, and as Michael laughed, he let his guard slip. Timothy did not waste a single second, pulling his dagger. Pressing the blade close, Timothy quietly told him to shut his mouth. The cold blade caught Michael completely off guard. Panic took over, and his immediate instinct was to turn tail and run. But it was a trick, and the cocky leader was already plotting. Michael charged forward, screaming at Timothy to stay focused as he initiated the attack. But his desperate charge failed instantly, sending him crashing onto the dirt in a matter of seconds. He lay there disarmed, completely dumbfounded. His teammates froze in sheer disbelief, completely unsure of what they had just witnessed. They hesitated to defend their leader, and Timothy saw their doubt instantly. He coldly asked if anyone else wanted to step up and challenge him next. On the ground, Michael stared at his trembling hands, unable to accept his defeat. A level 1 player beat him. Timothy laughed at his shocked face. He scoffed that Michael's level 20 status was absolutely pathetic compared to his own. Get ready, because checking his level is about to blow their minds. Michael looked too, freezing in sheer terror at the level 100 stat. This had to be a glitch. If this was real, he had just picked a fight with a monster. Timothy smirked, reminding them that they used to treat him like a mere corpse collector. Now in their eyes, he was suddenly some sort of terrifying, overpowered beast. He insisted he was just a regular guy, but as he spoke, he noticed something strange. Looking around, he realized they had vanished down a quiet alleyway. Those 3 arrogant adventurers were already sprinting away in absolute terror. Lindsay walked up, smiling as she noted how much he had truly changed. People were actually running from him now. She was thrilled for her savior, but they needed to move. Urging him to follow, she insisted on sharing his incredible new strength with the entire village. Soon after, the duo pushed open the heavy wooden door of the local shop. The shopkeeper glared coldly at Timothy, clearly annoyed by their sudden arrival. He sighed, listening carefully, but expecting absolutely nothing special from them. Timothy ignored the man's dismissive attitude entirely. He calmly explained that he was there to sell some high-grade monster loot. The store owner scoffed, demanding that the lowly corpse collector stop wasting his precious time. Smiling quietly, Timothy reached into his bag and pulled out a rare, shimmering item. Asking if this still looked like garbage, he left the merchant frozen in absolute shock. He could not believe his eyes as he stared at the boy's hand. Resting in the palm of Timothy's hand was the massive, sharp fang of a legendary goblin lord. The shopkeeper grabbed it instantly, desperately asking where on earth he had obtained it. Timothy paused briefly before stating that he killed the beast himself. Naturally, the greedy shopkeeper just laughed in his face, completely refusing to believe such an outrageous claim. This was simply too far-fetched for the weak boy he used to know. Timothy called on Lindsay, who quickly nodded and confirmed every single word of his wild tale. Without waiting for his reaction, Timothy began emptying his heavy bag. A massive pile of glittering, rare loot spilled across the counter, leaving the merchant completely speechless. "Take it or leave it," he asked if they had a deal. He could easily find another dealer in town who would appreciate these goods. Shaken, the greedy merchant snapped out of his daze and desperately agreed to buy it all. He simply could not pass up these highly coveted boss materials. Timothy hoped the man would finally give these valuable items their proper worth. After selling everything, the incredibly hungry pair immediately headed to the lively market for food. Timothy proudly showed his heavy bag of gold coins to a friendly elder. The old man asked where he had suddenly acquired such immense wealth. Timothy happily replies that he finally managed to take down a really strong monster, earning this reward for his hard work. Hearing his grandson's explanation, the old man sincerely congratulates him on this big achievement, but a second later, something completely unexpected happens. His grandfather runs right over and pulls him into a tight hug. At that moment, Timothy feels like the happiest kid alive, truly loved. But then he spots some commotion near the exit of the market. He tells his grandfather and Lindsay to wait behind, which is a smart call. Werewolves just breached the village, putting everyone in serious danger now. One of the beasts already locks eyes on a girl fleeing for her life. Luckily, Timothy dashes in right in the nick of time, slamming a fatal strike into the monster and saving her. Once the beast falls, he checks on the terrified girl to make sure she is all right, and she nods in relief. Turning back, he stares at the remaining werewolves, demanding to know what they are. Honestly, he does not expect an answer at all. It does not matter anyway, they picked the wrong village today. Just then, a whole pack leaps over the fence, lining up right in front of Timothy to attack. He cannot let them get any further. Meanwhile, panicked villagers are shouting for Michael and his team of adventurers, but Timothy knows the village defenders actually fled because of him. Yes, the responsibility is now completely on him. He is fine with that, especially since the werewolves are charging. They are only level 8, posing absolutely zero threat to him now. But Timothy is just one guy. While he fights, some beasts slip past him to terrorize the village while he is tied up. Screams echo through the streets. Timothy realizes the crowd is completely cornered. If he does not act right now, these monsters will massacre everyone. Just as a werewolf leaps at another victim, Timothy steps in, deflecting the strike and punching the beast square in the nose. He beats the werewolf senseless until it stops moving completely, one down. Once it is safe, he asks the shaken survivor if he is all right, and the guy stammeringly replies that he is not hurt. But the man rudely mutters that Timothy is just a lowly corpse. Collector Timothy ignores it, saying he has much bigger things to handle. Even though these people insult him, he has clear morals. He cannot just watch them die, so he must eliminate this entire pack. Immediately, he blurs past the stunned locals at an unbelievable speed. They cannot comprehend where his massive strength comes from. One by one, he wipes out the beasts, who stand zero chance against a level 100 fighter. With every kill, his stats skyrocket. Soon, his level rises all the way to 172. Wait, he rose by 72 levels, but there were 10 werewolves. If he killed them all, he should have reached level 80. That means Timothy missed one, and it is likely lurking in the crowd. The boy was totally right. A massive werewolf sat perched on the roof, glaring down at a young girl standing completely helpless in the street. Timothy. He acted fast. He had to reach her before the werewolf leaped. He knew his high level and battle experience still could not guarantee that he would be able to save absolutely everyone in this chaos. The beast closed in fast. The little girl stood completely frozen in terror. Looking at her, Timothy knew he simply could not stand by and watch. He had to act immediately. His only real option was to throw his sword. It was a single, desperate gamble, far better than living with the regret of doing nothing. Without a single second of hesitation, Timothy hurled his weapon straight toward the monster. The heavy blade cut cleanly through the air, closing the distance in a fraction of a second, and then impact. The brutal force of the strike blasted the werewolf backward, smashing it deep into a house wall. Severely wounded, the beast collapsed. Timothy quickly hurried over to the terrified little girl. She was trembling, head buried in her arms, but when she felt the danger pass, she slowly looked up, instantly recognizing him and calling him the corpse collector in complete surprise. She asked if he had genuinely come to save them. Timothy just smiled, relieved. She was unharmed. Still, there was no time to linger or chat. He quickly said his goodbyes to the rescued child. He was glad she was safe, but before he could even take a step, the angry villagers surrounded him. Timothy prepared himself for the absolute worst. One of them stepped forward, demanding a serious word with the corpse collector. Timothy expected this. It made sense they would hate being saved by someone like him. Why would they ever want to be indebted to a lowly scavenger like him? Rather than sitting around waiting for their insults, he chose to walk away, telling them they probably did not even want to look at his face, but they stopped him. To his absolute shock, the villagers actually reached out to thank him. Because of his swift action, not a single soul here had been hurt. Timothy had risked his life for them. Just then, the little girl's mother approached. The young warrior stood there awkwardly, completely unsure of how to react to her. She pleaded for him to listen, her voice trembling with emotion. The mother bowed deeply to the ground in gratitude. Stunned, Timothy rushed forward, telling her to stand up immediately. He had only wanted to help, nothing more. Yes, he was once a simple scavenger of the dead. Nothing could erase that past, but today he finally had the power to protect. Right there, he declared his path. He would become a true adventurer, helping those in need. He asked the villagers to watch over his journey, bowed, and quietly turned to leave. That day, he left his pathetic past behind. He was no longer just a corpse collector, but a true hero. The very next morning, Lindsay was running after him, calling his name as loud as she could. Timothy did not notice her at first, completely lost in his thoughts. When he finally turned around, Lindsay stopped dead in her tracks, completely shocked. She demanded to know where his armor went. Timothy just chuckled, asking if she meant his armor of the abyss, because he was already wearing it. Just this morning, Timothy suddenly realized he could summon and remove the armor whenever he wanted. With this gear, he finally had what it takes to be a real adventurer. He was absolutely thrilled with his find inside that bizarre cave, but he was still tormented by one troubling question. Why on earth was there a massive dragon corpse in a goblin den? Not that it mattered anymore, things had ultimately worked out for him. But deep inside that same cave system, something far worse was brewing. Michael and his companion squad were desperately running for their lives. A terrifying enemy was closing in fast, snapping right at their heels. His teammates struggled to keep up, crying out to him for help. Michael couldn't comprehend how a beast like this ended up down here. He pushed his body to the limit to escape, but it was useless. In a flash, the monster cut him off, looming directly in front of him. Michael sank to the cold dirt, knowing his end had finally arrived. Back above ground, Timothy felt an incredibly strange, ominous pull. Hours earlier, Michael's party had been hunting a giant cyclops. They chased the beast through the village, leaving it severely wounded. But Michael was furious that the target managed to slip away. They were so close to killing it, he urged them to double their pace. The bleeding beast had already reached the mouth of the caverns. As it vanished into the dark, the three hunters halted right outside. Staring inside, Michael remembered the massive fine hanging over their heads. Missing the recent werewolf attack had cost them a fortune in penalties. There was absolutely no way they could let this prey escape them now. The Cyclops had to die right now. Meanwhile, inside the dark caverns, the beast was drawn to the overwhelming scent of a dead dragon. It immediately began tearing into the meat. The squad pressed onward inside, driven entirely by greed, skipping any kind of scout work. As the three moved deeper into the tunnels, a horrific odor hit them. The thick, nauseating stench of death filled the damp air. Something had clearly died here very recently. You can only imagine the sheer shock on their faces as they looked inside. A wounded Cyclops was savagely feasting on the massive dragon. Looking at this grotesque sight, the young adventurers realized something was horribly wrong. Back in the present, Timothy stood at the forest's edge, focusing. He tried to pinpoint the strange energy prickling against his skin. Someone incredibly powerful was lurking nearby right now. Guided by instinct, his feet led him straight toward the goblin cave. It felt as if some unseen thread bound him to this dark place. He followed the copper smell of blood growing heavier with every step. The dragon chamber lay ahead, but the sight inside made him freeze. A towering Cyclops stood there, holding a broken, lifeless body. With a brutal shrug, it tossed the dead adventurer aside like trash. Blood splattered the stone. The monster had slaughtered Michael's entire team. Now its single, bloodshot eye locked onto Timothy standing in the dark. Timothy stares down the monster. He has never faced a demon like this, but his confidence is solid. He feels totally secure in his own skin. Timothy decides right then and there that he must strike first, taking the initiative before the massive Cyclops can even make a single move. But out of nowhere, the system suddenly stops him. Warning flashes, the level gap is way too massive, and Timothy is urged to run. The sheer shock leaves him completely frozen. He fails to see the monster charging in, taking a brutal direct hit. Timothy chokes under the raw pressure, losing his footing and crashing deep into the cavern. The interface urges him to analyze the enemy's status, and when he does, he can hardly believe what he is seeing. This gigantic abyssal Cyclops on screen is sitting at level 200, an impossibly high rank. The young man hesitates, completely paralyzed. Suddenly, a massive energy surge registers near the target. It is gathering in the beast's head. Still pinned to the dirt, Timothy gets a red alert to flee, but his battered body refuses to move. The monster looms closer, ready to claim another victim, while the system keeps blaring warning signals to get out. Timothy forces his broken limbs to stand. If he cannot pull off a miracle right now, he is dead. Just 8 seconds remain before the final blast. The countdown ticks away as he desperately props himself up with his sword. Then, the timer hits 0. A blinding energy beam erupts from the eye, throwing him back. Timothy is entirely powerless against this force, screaming in agony as the devastating impact tears through him. Crashing hard near the furnace depths, the young corpse collector begins to drift out of consciousness, yet the beast shows absolutely no intention of stopping its relentless assault. Time blurs, but when he finally opens his eyes, things have shifted. The interface notes that the Cyclops has abandoned the cavern. It likely assumed Timothy was already dead, a massive mistake even if it was close. His armor warns him of severe trauma, strongly recommending an immediate healing potion. Relief washes over Timothy. He had completely forgotten about the valuable medicine he looted back in that damp goblin lair. Chugging down the liquid, a surge of strength allows him to finally sit up. Honestly, he owes those ugly goblins a thank you. Staring toward the cave exit, he knows he must pursue the giant. It is heading straight for the village. Timothy scrambles toward the light. But a weak, familiar voice suddenly calls him a lowly corpse collector. He stops, squinting through the thick shadows of the cavern, and spots Michael slumped against a rocky wall. The arrogant fighter is alive. Fighting through immense agony, Michael wheezes that he saw the healing potion in Timothy's bag, demanding that the collector hand it over immediately. Even now, the elite adventurer thinks such medicine is too good for a commoner. Michael wants to patch his own wounds and run away to save his own skin before the beast reaches the village. He screams, ordering Timothy to yield the medicine without another word. But his demands cut short as he violently chokes on his own blood. Desperate now, Michael starts begging Timothy for mercy. The agony is unbearable. The collector asks his armor if healing potions help. But saving Michael is hopeless. His injuries are far too severe. The system delivers the brutal truth. There is no hope. With 0 chance of survival, the calculations are totally grim. He has only minutes left. Massive blood loss will quickly claim his life. Timothy feels sick, yet he wonders if his skill works on humans. The system confirms it. Yes, level absorption works on the living. He turns to Michael with heavy eyes. There is nothing more he can do. Michael already knows. He curses the relentless, agonizing pain in his body. He just wants it to end, even if that is wishing too much. Timothy offers the only way out. He can end his misery right now. Michael accepts. He understands his fate and tells Timothy to do it. Gathering his absolute last bit of remaining strength, he stares up at the collector and tells him to finish it quickly. Timothy admits something dark. He always hated the guy, yet in this final second, a strange sadness hits him. He grants the wish. It is a pretty tragic way to hit level 200. Meanwhile, the massive Cyclops has already reached the quiet village. He watches the unsuspecting villagers right through the thick branches. The monster can feel a powerful energy calling out to him. He roars in absolute delight and joy. The helpless prey is finally found. But the beast has absolutely no idea a furious witness remains alive. Timothy blindsides the beast, landing a heavy blow straight to its nose. The monster shrieks in agony as dark blood sprays from his wounded arm. Timothy yells that there is no forgiveness. The beast dies today. He charges back in, determined to bring the giant down. The level 200 warrior warns the Cyclops to finish his enemies. Because the monster spared him, they are now on equal footing. Timothy cannot wait a single second. He must end this creature immediately. He wants to destroy the beast quickly before the villagers are killed. Finally, he adds that he had to kill his own friend. He did it with his own hands, and now he is completely blinded by rage. The Cyclops charges instantly, completely infuriated by the impudence of this little human. Timothy uses that blind fury to leap onto the monster's shoulder. He slips behind its back, trying to exploit the blind spot. Once behind the giant, he strikes, but the hit feels weak. The wings are far more durable than he initially expected. The Cyclops begins gathering massive energy for another heavy strike. But Timothy refuses to give him a single chance. Too late, he realizes the energy charge was just a decoy. It was a physical setup, and the giant kicks him hard. Before he can recover, the monster uproots a nearby tree. He swings the massive trunk like a heavy club, sending Timothy flying crashing backward. He smashes violently through branches before slamming hard into the dirt. He lies there gasping, completely out of breath and exhausted. His injuries are severe, but his sheer determination remains completely unbroken. It was on the line even though they seemed evenly matched, yet the Cyclops remained far stronger. Desperate, the boy pulled out another healing potion and gulped it down. That monster had really played dirty, but as the liquid worked its magic, his strength rushed back, wiping his mouth. Timothy growled that this fight was far from over. Suddenly, the beast began gathering massive energy. Once more, the game system immediately flashed a warning, advising him to run. Timothy scrambled to find his bearings in the chaos. But the Cyclops was just getting warmed up. A second later, he was dodging a devastating energy beam while the corpse collector desperately searched for some kind of escape. Options were running low. Timothy knew that offense was his only real defense here. Instead of just dodging, he launched himself straight into the sky and blasted one of the wings with a crackling lightning strike. That the monster used to shield its giant eye, a painful cry escaped Timothy's throat. But he still managed to slice right through that tough wing. It was a brutal effort, but this small win gave him a massive confidence boost. He believed in himself again. Then, the beast did something that caught him completely off guard. The giant Cyclops suddenly launched itself off the dirt. Unbelievable, the massive beast actually wanted to escape. It turned tail, leaving Timothy completely unable to hold it back. The boy immediately put the pieces together. The monster was heading to massacre the nearby villagers to rebuild its power. He sprinted after the fleeing colossus at breakneck speed. He had to reach the village before the slaughter started, but the danger was already arriving. The innocent villagers had no warning until a massive shadow suddenly blocked out the sun. Thankfully, the frantic crowd managed to scramble away from the impact zone just in time. The landing felt like a bomb going off. Instantly, the monster began smashing houses to splinters. Terrified screams echoed as people scattered everywhere, crying out for salvation. Their panic only drew the beast's gaze. It fired a deadly energy beam directly into the fleeing crowd and shattered the surrounding buildings. Timothy could not let this slaughter continue. He struck the giant from its blind spot, screaming at it to stop, but as it turned, intending to strike back, the boy vanished from sight like a ghost. The giant looked up, spotting Timothy high in the air, poised for another strike. Down he came, but as Timothy closed the distance, the Cyclops casually swatted the attack away, a smug grin plastered on its face. Timothy refused to back down. He unleashed a barrage of rapid strikes, determined to defend the village. Annoyed by his persistence, the Cyclops concentrated energy into its single eye. It was not going down without a fight. In the heat of the moment, Timothy let his guard drop, and the beast seized the opportunity. Thankfully, at the absolute last second, he managed to dodge a lethal blow, seeing that its attack had missed. The monster followed through with a heavy, swinging fist. There was no escaping this one. The impact slammed Timothy deep into the dirt, kicking up a massive cloud of dust. Debris flew everywhere. Meanwhile, the Cyclops simply turned away and leaped across the rooftops, heading straight toward the center of the town. The dust settled. Everyone saw Timothy lying deep inside the crater. Seconds later, he struggled to rise, declaring his mission was not over. Only he could stop this demon. Timothy had to keep fighting. Meanwhile, the giant Cyclops reached the central market, cornering his grandfather. The old supplier calmly called the massive beast a mindless thug. Looking around, the old man realized running away was completely pointless. The beast would easily catch him, so there was no use trying. He just needed to buy time, and luckily, Timothy did not wait long. Suddenly, Timothy appeared right in front of the giant monster's face. The boy shouted back that a lowly scrapper could never be a hero. But his grandfather was stubborn, insisting that Timothy was indeed their savior. After all, why else would he come to help him? The boy agreed inside, but he still had no idea how to win. This enemy was far too strong. The old man went silent. He replied that their identical tier levels did not really matter right now. Rummaging through a drawer, he told the boy to stop overthinking things. Finding what he wanted, he tossed something directly toward the young hero. He threw a piece of bread, and Timothy automatically caught it. Looking down, Timothy realized this was the same food he once ate. It was the cheap bread he chewed as a corpse collector every day. The grandfather asked if things were truly any different from back then. Timothy smiled. The bread still tasted absolutely terrible. But the familiar taste helped him pull himself together completely. Thanking the old man, he prepared to face the beast. Apologizing to the monster for the wait, he got ready to fight. Without another word, he immediately charged straight at the giant enemy. He moved like a blur, landing quick strikes and dodging blows. But in a split second, he lost control. The monster grabbed his arm. The Cyclops thrashed him around violently like a helpless rag doll. After spinning him, it threw him hard into a nearby house. The entire street collapsed into ruins. Things look incredibly grim. But Timothy refused to stay down. He was the town's last shield. Still, despite his best efforts, he could not find a way to win. Suddenly, the crying of a child made him look up instantly. He spotted a little boy cowering in terror near a ruined wall. The corpse collector rushed over, trying to protect him from the Cyclops. Timothy screamed at him to run, but the kid was frozen. Weeping, the child whimpered that he was terrified and his legs would not move. But his warnings were useless. The Cyclops' eye had already spotted them. Its massive single eye locked onto the kid, targeting him next. The giant leaped, crashing right down beside the terrified child. With its jaws wide open, the boy closed his eyes, expecting death. But Timothy shielded him, roaring that he would never let that happen. In pure desperation, the young hero blocked a massive coming blow. The Cyclops pressed down with extreme force, trying to crush him. Timothy gets a brief second to catch his breath as the beast backs off. He screams at the young kid to run away as fast as he possibly can. But the boy is totally paralyzed. Nearby, the Cyclops begins channeling a lethal beam. With seconds left, Timothy frantically tries to push some courage into the kid. He says the boy is brave enough to survive, sparking hope in him. The boy struggles back to his feet, shouting that he will never let fear control him again. While the young child dashes down the street towards safety, Timothy braces himself for the next clash. His system rings with warnings. Energy is building rapidly. He needs to retreat, but his body refuses. He has 0 strength remaining. This looks like the absolute end. The Cyclops unloads a blinding beam of pure destruction straight at him. Timothy gets blasted. His body slams violently through the opposite building. Shattering concrete, he flies straight through the structure, landing on the next street. He is barely breathing, his stamina completely depleted. They are technically the same level, but the gap in strength is just staggering. This Cyclops is an absolute monster. The system advises immediate healing. Desperate, he reaches toward his personal storage compartment for a potion. A second later, his heart drops as he feels around. Nothing there, not a single healing potion is left inside. They shattered during that last attack. Honestly, how does his luck keep getting worse? All hope vanishes. Without immediate recovery, he knows he is dead. Slowly, his consciousness slips away entirely. If he passes out, the village falls. He must survive to save them. He desperately prays for help from anyone. Remarkably, his request is answered. A soothing healing potion is poured down his throat, easing his agony. Timothy slowly blinks his eyes open and sees a total stranger. The girl gasps happily, shouting in relief that he has regained consciousness. Timothy struggles to sit up, weakly demanding to know her name. Melissa introduces herself, explaining she was born and raised here. This village is her home, and she wants to protect it at all costs. But the Cyclops will not wait. It is actively demolishing everything. He must drag himself back into the fight before the destruction is total. Melissa softly mentions that she saw him risking his life for them. The villagers want to protect their home too, no matter the consequences. They are all deeply grateful for his sacrifice. She rises and offers her hand. She urges him to flee, but the battered guy firmly shakes his head. He cannot run. He is the only defender capable of stopping this beast. Leaning heavily on his sword, he struggles to stand, trying to plan his next move. He has to protect everyone, even in this state. Melissa objects immediately. If he falls to the beast now, then the entire village is doomed. He looks past her, seeing the rising smoke and raging fires. The ruins are expanding rapidly. Melissa insists he is their only hope. Because he is the sole defender, he must avoid fighting the monster right now. He can only take up his sword again once his body is fully healed. His broken bones scream in protest. He needs to rest, if only for a minute, to recover before jumping back into the fight. But Timothy and Melissa's plans go up in smoke when the Cyclops crashes down right in front of them. Ready for another round, Melissa quickly reaches out her hand to the young boy. He has to choose now, run or fight, and this time the boy does not hesitate. He grabs Melissa by the hand and sprints away as fast as humanly possible. Dodging the beast, the girl ducks into a narrow alleyway while Timothy keeps pace, asking her how she even knows his name. Rounding another corner, Melissa explains that he is actually quite famous in their village. Timothy wonders if this so-called popularity has something to do with the corpse collector. And the girl confirms it, but there are a few details. Abruptly stopping to face him, she smiles and says she looks up to him as a true hero. She was right there when the werewolves attacked their home, and she witnessed everything firsthand. Suddenly turning bright red and closing her eyes tightly, Melissa confesses that this is the reason she has faith. She honestly believes that Timothy can save them all, and her words give the young boy a massive surge of motivation. With unwavering determination, the boy promises to slay the beast and protect their home, but their brief moment of peace is violently cut short by horrified screams echoing from around the next corner. Peering around, they see a gang of thugs dragging innocent villagers toward wooden carts. Right in the middle of the square, 2 carts are already crammed with captives, and the thugs are throwing the last young girl inside, the leader of the bandits barks orders to speed things up before the giant monster gets here. Talk about taking advantage of a tragedy. Absolutely zero morals on these guys. The disgusting outlaw bursts out laughing, their golden opportunity to make easy money has finally arrived. Timothy cannot believe he has run into such vile trash who do not even deserve to be called human. In the middle of this disaster, these scum are busy robbing innocent civilians blind. Melissa is absolutely sickened by their cruelty. This is pure evil. But while Timothy is completely focused on the horror in the square, he fails to notice that Melissa is no longer standing by his side. Spinning around, his heart drops. A massive thug has grabbed Melissa by the neck and is threatening to slit her throat. The heavy giant growls at Timothy, warning him to drop his weapon immediately if he wants the girl to live. Timothy holds back his immense rage, desperate to tear the bastard to pieces, but forced to stop because his friend is held hostage, submitting to the giant's demands. They slowly step out from the alleyway to face the robber leader. The boss scratches his head in annoyance, pointing out that they do not have any use for male captives, but a second later, the entire gang locks their greedy eyes onto Melissa, realizing just how beautiful she actually is. One of the scum snickers, saying they will fetch an incredibly high price. On the black market, Timothy demands to know how they can act this vile when their own village is on the verge of total destruction. The bandit leader just laughs, saying he does not give a damn about this place. They came here solely to pillage, and the monster attack actually made their job easier. Suddenly marching right up to Timothy, the smug leader looks him dead in the eye. They should be glad they weren't all slaughtered. Hearing those words made the boys' blood run hot. Were they really just trash? Timothy's glare didn't faze the leader one bit. He just laughed and asked if he was actually an adventurer. Leaning in close to Timothy's ear, the thug whispered that he was deeply sorry. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Even with insane power, the rookie couldn't do a thing here. The leader of the bandits completely dismissed Timothy from then on. He turned back to his crew, ordering everyone to pack up and hit the road. Looking over at Melissa, who was still pinned by the giant, he barked to watch her. Even more closely, they couldn't let the kid ruin their plans. Timothy only needed a single second. If an opening showed up, he would rescue Melissa right away, and right on cue, Lindsay gave him that chance. The girl charged the massive bandit, so fast she could not stop herself. Time when he dodged, she tripped over a rock and crashed hard to the ground. With her blade still raised, the brute mocked her, claiming she'd never beat him. He was in a totally different league, but Lindsay just smiled and replied that beating him wasn't her goal. The real plan was actually a bit different. She screamed that she was just the bait, and in that instant, Timothy struck. The kid moved with such blinding speed and power that the robber had zero chance. He got launched straight into the air, dropping Melissa from his grip. Luckily, Timothy was right there to catch her in time. She landed safely in his arms. He quickly told her to go hide. Because the rest of the gang was already moving in, a clash was inevitable. Bandits drew their blades, completely surrounding him from all sides. Timothy looked around at this pathetic display, wondering if these guys were serious. Did they really think they stood a chance against him? He wasn't planning on holding back anyway. The leader laughed and shouted that they weren't scared of some fool pretending to be a big hero. Timothy turned directly toward him and issued one final, quiet warning. It wasn't too late to walk away, because their power gap was just too massive. In a flash, the fight ended. The barely surviving leader gasped, "What are you? Normal adventurers aren't this fast." Timothy stepped closer and quietly told him that he was definitely no ordinary adventurer. Their little gang was unlucky enough to cross paths with a level 200 powerhouse. The leader cursed, lunging forward with his sword. He couldn't take such humiliation. Once the dust settled, a system alert popped up, notifying Timothy of a level up. He had actually reached the absolute maximum level limit for a human. He was shocked, apparently. Humans couldn't rise past level 250. He'd never expected a cap, but then, he'd never met anyone this strong either. He was suddenly pulled from his thoughts as Melissa threw her arms around him. Crying with relief, the sudden hug almost knocked him off his feet. She sobbed her thanks, but Timothy smiled and said he'd never leave her. He owed her his life, after all. She was the one who saved him. Back when she gave him that crucial recovery potion to drink, without her, that giant cyclops would have ended him a long time ago. He had screamed about protecting her. Melissa gently took his face in her hands and told him that after everything he did, he had become a real hero to her. Timothy stood there, completely confused. He did not think he deserved to hear praise like that. Nobody had ever praised him before, but if he had left those bandits alive, they would have just raided other villages. The thoughts kept spinning through his mind. He knew there was absolutely no other choice. He had to take their lives, or they would never stop. Melissa insisted that none of this was his fault. He was not guilty of anything, and there was no reason to beat himself up. He had to take those lives to protect the villagers, who now had the chance to hold each other tight. That was why she believed there was absolutely no reason to feel guilty about what he did. Timothy did the right thing. She pressed a hand to her chest and looked directly into his wide eyes, telling him he was her hero. The kind words felt like absolute honey to him, having been starved of warmth his entire life. He felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Suddenly, Lindsay ran up and announced that all the captured villagers had already safely returned to their homes. Timothy placed a hand on her head and praised her as a great helper, making her giggle. Hopping up and down, Lindsay beamed, saying she was just glad to be useful. When Timothy was fighting, she could only stand by and watch, even though she desperately wanted to help. Next time, she wanted to fight right alongside him. She wanted to stand close to her savior and actually be of some use. Timothy gently shook his head, disagreeing. He told her there was no night, and that she should just enjoy being a kid. Suddenly, a cyclops loomed on the horizon, hunting for adventurers. Timothy spun toward the girls and told them that it would be best for both of them to hide immediately. The system pinged, confirming that reaching the 250th level meant he could finally handle this beast. Timothy locked his gaze onto the incoming monster. He finally had the chance to take this giant down for good. A moment later, the massive cyclops stormed into the town square where they stood. Timothy actually smiled, almost glad to face the beast again. Get ready, because this is the final showdown. The monster has to go, but the girls being so close kept him from starting the battle. Timothy yelled at them once more to get under cover immediately. As they scrambled away, Timothy mockingly apologized to the beast for running last time. This time he was not backing down. It was time to settle the score. Right here in this square, watching the Cyclops smash through the streets, Timothy remembered a time when he could not even hold a blade. Then came the day he swung a sword for the very first time just to survive. Back then it was about protecting his home and staying alive. But today he had to swing it to carry the hopes of his friends. He roared at the beast to brace itself as the battle commenced. Now the beast was about to feel the strength of a true human peak. His bold challenge completely stripped the monster of all patience, causing it to smash nearby houses and charge straight at Timothy. But the boy stood his ground, entirely unfazed by the roaring beast. Rage with a clean sword blow, Timothy laughs off the monster's desperate attacks as completely useless. He is not that same weakling anymore, Timothy counters instantly. Sending the Cyclops flying backward, it crashes hard onto the dirt as the young warrior stands his ground. He watches the massive cloud of dust rising high into the sky. A moment later, the Cyclops bursts through the haze, charging up a wild stream of energy directly at Timothy. His system warns of a massive buildup. Timothy calmly tells his sentient armor not to worry at all. He lifts his blade. A giant like this is no longer a threat. In this world, level determines everything, and right now, this abyssal Cyclops, no matter how huge, stands no chance against a level 250 powerhouse. The monster unleashes its attack, aiming a blazing beam of energy straight at Timothy. But the young warrior barely even blinks as it hits. The beast stands zero chance against this massive level gap. Honestly, it is not even close. And that is exactly what is happening here. The Cyclops roars in pure frustration. The beast simply cannot comprehend how this puny human grew so incredibly strong. In the short time since they last crossed paths, Timothy stares back and mocks the creature, asking if it is actually feeling scared. It is pretty ironic, considering how bold the monster was while slaughtering innocent villagers. But karma is real. Now, it is the monster's turn to get crushed. Timothy is more than happy to deliver that brutal lesson. It shouldn't be so shocked. The boy blurs forward, charging straight at the Cyclops with unbelievable speed. Levels rule this world, and he proves it by driving his sword deep into the beast. The sheer impact of the strike completely shatters the giant's balance, sending it crashing down. Furious, the Cyclops scrambles back to its feet and immediately fires another beam. Timothy warns the beast that it still hasn't realized what it is up against. He says it is his absolute duty to teach this creature the meaning of true despair. He casually raises his bare hand, using it as an impenetrable shield. To completely absorb the incoming energy blast, the Cyclops stares in absolute disbelief, while Timothy asks if it finally understands the gap between them. This self-proclaimed god simply refuses to accept such a pathetic defeat. Gathering its remaining strength, the beast recklessly charges forward for one last strike. Throwing that giant fist is a huge mistake. Timothy is not just stronger now, but insanely fast. He easily dodges the punch with a quick backstep. Desperate, the Cyclops immediately follows up with a surprise laser blast. But Timothy expects it, knowing it is time to wrap this up. He leaps high into the air, ready to deliver the final blow. The giant tries desperately to track his movement, but it is totally hopeless. Timothy is already descending, forcing the beast onto the defensive. In one swift, blinding flash, Timothy severs the giant arm shielding its eye. This massive loss immediately cripples the beast, dealing a highly devastating blow. It screeches in agonizing pain, clutching its bleeding stump with its remaining hand. Honestly, this fight has dragged on long enough, and Timothy wants it over with. He coldly commands the Cyclops to get on its knees and submit. But the losing beast goes completely berserk, wildly firing energy beams. In every direction, Timothy simply sighs, telling the creature that resistance is pointless. The boy rushes the Cyclops. He plants a heavy punch that sends the giant crashing down. On the ground, the beast looks up to see the boy charging to finish him. Timothy growls that the beast has harmed far too many innocent people in this land. Declaring it is time to pay the price, he drives his blade into the giant's single eye. By the next day, a massive rebuilding project begins in the village with everyone helping. Natural leaders quickly emerge, directing everyone where to go and what to do. But during the rush, a young villager carrying wood suddenly trips. He stumbles over a stray rock and begins to fall, suddenly like a shadow. Timothy slips out of nowhere, catching the boy and his heavy load. The young villager looks up to see the local corpse collector standing right there. He mutters his thanks, and Timothy simply warns him to be more careful next time. Later, Timothy stands beneath a distant tree, alone with his thoughts. He ponders what level transformation actually means. The system immediately chimes in. It explains that by absorbing his own levels, he can create unique skills. These skills grant active effects like speed boosts or fire resistance. This is an incredible advantage for adventurers who typically focus only on leveling. They usually just accumulate experience points to raise their standard levels. Getting a skill like this is incredibly rare, but somehow Timothy just pulled it off. Previously, he could not gain normal experience points, locking him out of unique skills. But now, by sacrificing levels, he can acquire legendary abilities. It is a massive trade-off that makes him stop and think. His biggest question now is, what secrets does the armor of the abyss actually hold? The system advises a different path, recommending that he first acquire the break, the limit skill for infinite leveling. The price for this legendary skill is exactly 240 levels. If he buys it now, Timothy will instantly lose almost all of his progress. He would plummet from his current 250 levels down to almost nothing. Looking at the big picture, this step is absolutely necessary to grow. Without hesitation, he resolutely pays the steep price for this future power. The system prompts him, stating he must recite a code phrase and the skill name. The phrase is purchase request. Timothy utters it without hesitation. With the conditions met, the system begins the level transformation process. Timothy has no idea what is happening. Everything suddenly shifts. A blinding beam of pure energy suddenly shoots straight into the heavens. At that exact moment, a hidden seal on his armor activates with intense pain. 240 levels are violently ripped straight out of his soul's talisman. A few minutes pass before the system announces that the process is complete. Success, he has officially acquired the break the limit skill. A wave of clarity washes over him, expanding his mind. The system reports that the absolute limit of humanity has been shattered. In other words, he has evolved into a being that transcends mankind. Meanwhile, a weary traveler enters the village, complaining about his long journey. He is extremely frustrated because despite surviving countless dangers along the road, he arrives only to find that the monster has already been defeated. His entire trip was a waste, but he is curious about the warrior. He asks around, desperate to learn who defeated the demon. The system warned that his maximum level was exceeded, leaving 200 levels. Sitting there ready to be absorbed, honestly, our main guy had completely forgotten his failed attempt to absorb the Cyclops level last time. Within seconds, Timothy watched his level bar rocket upward as active absorption took over. Even though his previous transformations had drained almost all his levels. Before he could finally relax and fight monsters, Timothy decided that he needed to gather as many unique skills as possible. These special abilities were incredibly valuable. Grabbing a bunch of them would pretty much guarantee that he became the strongest adventurer in the entire world, he realized. That first he had to carefully map out his next moves. Suddenly, his plotting was cut short when Melissa tackled him from behind, and the poor guy hit the dirt in pure shock. Grinning, she told him she was searching everywhere for him. Ever since yesterday's crazy victory, the village was in pure chaos, making it impossible to find him. Timothy quickly apologized, explaining that he was helping the villagers extinguish the fires. Right then, Lindsay strolled onto the grass, mentioning how incredibly worried Melissa had actually been. When the two turned around, Lindsay offered a teasing smile and added that obviously she was worried about him too. Timothy was just glad that both of them were safe. He had really been stressing over them. Melissa smiled, saying everything turned out fine because of her boyfriend, expressing her deepest gratitude. Calling it a simple token of appreciation, Melissa leaned in close and kissed Timothy on the cheek. Immediately, both of them flushed, feeling completely awkward and flustered. Finally, Melissa looked down, softly confessing that she had fallen in love with him before he could even process the news. She was already sprinting away, completely red-faced. That left only Lindsay and Timothy standing on the grass, sharing a stunned, silent stare, trying to digest what just went down. Suddenly, an old man popped up right behind him, laughing that it seemed spring had finally arrived for the kid. Unable to handle the girl and the old-timers' endless teasing any longer, Timothy began shouting and chasing them off as they fled giggling. Once he was alone, the young adventurer could not contain his excitement. Someone actually liked him. It was something he had never even dared to dream about. He was totally clueless on what to do next, but his game system chimed in, telling him to man up. A few days later, a massive squad of adventurers arrived near the village outskirts. They had finally reached their target location. It was a barren wasteland. Were they too late? One of the squad members disagreed, suggesting that this was likely not the case, and reasoned that a different monster had probably raided the village. If it had been the work of a fearsome fire dragon, there would be absolutely nothing left of this village. The squad leader replied that, regardless of what happened, they had to ask locals for information. No matter what took place before their arrival, these warriors had to stop the beast. Listening to the direct orders of their leader, they marched toward the settlement, highly motivated. Meanwhile, deep inside the infamous Goblin Cave, a new threat was stirring, and trust me, it looked incredibly dangerous. Out of the pitch-black shadows, a massive black dragon awoke, breathing wildfire everywhere. Elsewhere, Timothy decided to test out a few of his fresh abilities and hunt some monsters, clutching his daggers. Every single one of his projectiles hit their mark. Our guy was back at level 1 again. But over the last few days, he had managed to unlock several highly unique skills. Darting past the wild beasts of the woods, Timothy remembered his very first ability. It was poisonous coating. Even though it cost 200 levels, it was totally worth it. This let him apply fatal toxins to any weapon, helping him easily handle weaker monsters. And that is exactly what he was busy doing right now. His second skill was knife throwing. Buying these two abilities cost him every single level he had, but they changed the game. Now Timothy could safely take down beasts without ever getting into close combat. The only real downside of using poison is waiting for the target to actually drop dead. Still, even starting back at level 1, he could climb back up in no time. Standing in a quiet clearing, he watched bright level-up lights erupt. The golden beams pierced the sky. Suddenly, the system interface popped right up. Timothy was already up to level 41, and he instantly decided to invest in more power. He opened his menu, typed in a purchase request, and selected a new trade. He sacrificed some levels to get a poison boost. Within moments, the system processed it. The deal was complete. From here on out, his toxic attacks would kill beasts much quicker. He called it a day after poisoning about 20 targets in just a few hours. He would easily climb back to level 200. With his tasks finished, he headed home. But as he walked back down the road, a massive crowd caught his attention. Approaching the tail end of the group, he casually asked them what was going on. The leader of this adventure group took notice of him and seemed pretty curious. He asked if Timothy was an adventurer too. This leader was named Abe, level 120. He was a respected representative of the guild. Abe was about to invite him to join their ranks until he saw Timothy's profile. The system screen popped up, showing him at a measly level 1. It was not enough. The other nearby fighters immediately began to whisper. They assumed he was just some clueless rookie. Honestly, Timothy expected this exact reaction. Abe suggested that the kid was probably just hoping to become an adventurer. But Timothy quickly corrected him, stating he had actually been one for quite a while. This response completely threw the guild leader off, leaving him utterly speechless. Suddenly, another party member threw his arm around Timothy's shoulder with a loud laugh. He mockingly asked why an experienced veteran would still be sitting at level 1. He joked that it had to be a prank, but then he stared at Timothy's face. The man gasped and jumped back in pure horror. He recognized those familiar features. He had heard stories about this freak, the absolute weakest adventurer in history. The notorious corpse collector. Timothy simply nodded and asked if they had a problem with that. Seeing the tension rise rapidly, Abe stepped in to explain their actual mission here. He revealed that their guild had commissioned them for a highly dangerous hunt. Scouts had recently spotted multiple elite demons lurking around these specific lands. They were all gathering for one terrifying reason: a level 150 black dragon. It was hiding nearby. Abe knew that slaying such a beast alone was a suicide mission. That is exactly why he assembled this elite squad of warriors with unique abilities. Together, they were confident they could slay the dragon and protect the nearby village. But amid all his urgent explanations, Abe suddenly paused. He realized he had completely forgotten to actually introduce himself properly. Officially meet, shaking hands, Timothy quietly calculated his next move. He was pretty sure he could take on the dragon alone, but one Nagging thought kept him on edge. Was this the same black dragon that gave him his armor? Before he could dwell on it, a panicked scout came rushing toward Abe. The veteran unit leader stepped in immediately, demanding to know what had happened. The messenger was gasping for air, desperately trying to find his voice. Between heavy, ragged breaths, he choked out the news: they found the dragon. There was absolutely no mistake. It was definitely the same legendary black beast. Hearing this, Abe ordered the entire squad to move out toward the cave. He raised his voice so everyone could hear, making the final announcement. The target of their mission was finally found, and it was time to prepare. A surge of excitement hit the crowd, but Timothy was busy measuring their strength. This group was only around level 120th. Even with a few unique skills, they were still going to have a brutal time. A level 150 dragon is no joke. He could not just watch them die. Stepping forward, Timothy flatly asked Abe to let him join the raid. He just needed the monsters he previously poisoned to drop dead so he could level up. Reaching level 200 would make this fight easy, but Abe immediately shut him down. The leader shook his head, looking down at Timothy with deep concern. He told the kid it was way too dangerous, thinking Timothy was just being naive. Before Timothy could even argue, the surrounding adventurers started scoffing at him. They openly mocked his weakness, telling him to stay behind where he belonged. No room for dead weight here. One smug fighter got right in his face, saying Abe was being far too nice. To put it bluntly, Timothy was nothing but a useless weakling in their eyes. With that final insult, the group turned their backs and followed Abe. Timothy was left standing there, desperately frustrated. They were walking straight into a slaughter. But at level 1, he was completely powerless to stop them. All he could do now was wait for his delayed experience points to kick in. Once his level spiked, he would run after those stubborn idiots. Meanwhile at the cave, Abe was staring at a total nightmare. This was definitely not the level 150 beast they expected. Calling this a simple black dragon had to be some kind of joke. This was a catastrophe rank threat, the sovereign ruler of all black dragons. A level 300 monster, the legendary destroyer of worlds. It had already slaughtered the scouts, and now it welcomed them with roaring flames. Panic-stricken, Abe screamed for an immediate retreat. This was entirely hopeless. They desperately needed backup. He tried to scramble and contact the guild. But before he could, the dragon whipped its massive tail, slamming him down. Back at camp, Timothy sensed the battle starting and bolted toward the cave. Approaching the chaos, he spotted the giant monster looming in the distance. He instantly recognized it, the exact same beast from the goblin cave. How was this even possible? He thought he was just playing games in the oven. But Timothy quickly shook the thoughts away. No time to overthink this. The destroyer of worlds raised its massive head, preparing to strike again. Sparks ignite as the beast prepares to strike. Timothy accelerates, seeing that the flames have already broken out, turning the survivors to ash. He asks how long it will take to absorb the monster levels. The system answers 30 seconds, but Timothy demands a faster process because the dragon will not wait. Barely anyone is left alive. Finally, the system flashes a notification to the young man confirming that the poison killed the monsters. He is almost there. The level is absorbed, rising all the way to 201. Timothy immediately shouts to open the purchase shop. Right then, the dragon breathes a massive wave of fire straight at him. But his newly acquired flame resistance blocks it, Abe lying on the ground behind. Timothy watches the boy in complete shock, asking who is even left alive. He can barely form a single sentence, only stammering in absolute disbelief. That someone actually blocked the world destroyer, the same arrogant fighter. Demands to know why they are dying, while this measly corpse collector is completely unharmed. Timothy glances back and simply says it is because he is far stronger than them, yet even with this power, saving everyone was impossible. He offers a quiet apology, but it is already too late. The loudmouth collapses dead. Timothy realizes that raw strength alone cannot prevent every single tragedy. But to honor those who fell today, he must resolve to end this. Glaring up, Timothy yells directly at the massive dragon that his reign ends now. The beast responds with an earth-shaking roar. A split second later, a torrent of black fire erupts. Abe screams out the kid's name in terror. Timothy looks back over his shoulder, calmly telling his companion to relax. With a single bare hand, he catches the flames and crushes them into nothing. He stares down the monster, mocking that a spark that weak will never scratch him. While Abe stands frozen, the dragon's fury surges to a whole new level. Honestly, the sheer confidence is unreal. Timothy stays absolutely cool under that glare. However, buying that flame immunity cost him dearly, draining almost all his levels. He has plummeted all the way down to level 21. He is fully immune, but has no actual way to deal damage. He needs to farm some experience fast. The dragon quickly catches on, realizing its breath attacks are totally useless. So it switches to brute force instead. This is bad news for Timothy. At his low level, dodging these physical strikes takes all of his agility. One direct hit from the World Destroyer would easily finish him off. But in the blink of an eye, the dragon's massive head is cleanly severed. Timothy stares in utter shock. The warrior who did it calls the kid a disappointment. Stunned by how fast things shifted and how easily the beast fell, Timothy can only wonder who this guy is. The newcomer introduces himself as Tyler, exuding an overwhelming amount of confidence. He boasts with absolute pride that he is a completely unique existence on this continent. In fact, he is the sole adventurer holding the mythical rank, known as the legendary catastrophe rank. Timothy stands completely frozen. He has never even heard of such a rank. Abe manages to scramble up and confirms that it is his first time seeing this legend too. But the sheer pressure radiating from Tyler proves he is the real deal. He was a legendary adventurer of monstrous strength, standing high above everyone else. According to legends, absolutely nobody in this world can ever reach his level. This warrior stands head and shoulders above all other adventurers. Now, 4 eyes stare intently at Tyler, analyzing a living catastrophe to comprehend his terrifying threat. Tyler laughs out loud, turning to Abe and feeling flattered. By their knowledge, Timothy, checking the stranger's stats, quickly realizes this man is definitely on another level Tyler is sitting at. Level 300, the system pops up to warn Timothy that our target has a natural limit-breaking talent, which is the complete polar opposite of Timothy's own unique skill. Finally, letting his hidden malice seep out, Tyler complains that the dark-armored warrior ruined every single one of his plans. Timothy looks back in complete disbelief, asking what on earth he means. Tyler just scoffs, asking if Timothy hasn't heard the gossip from the village about a great hero who defeated a demon in a one-on-one duel. Because of all that hype, Tyler expected a real fight, but got disappointed. Suddenly, the World Destroyer opens its massive eyes and growls with fury. But the adventurer doesn't flinch, sitting casually on its scaly back. A second later, he drives his sword deep into the dragon's skull, telling it to shut up. They are talking here, after all. So the overgrown lizard shouldn't interrupt. Tyler then asks if they even know the beast will keep regenerating unless they smash its magical core. With a dark grin, he mentions that he once killed a dragon inside a goblin cave. Deep down, Timothy already suspected this, but hearing it confirmed still shocks him. His theory was right. Tyler explains that he deliberately left the core intact back then. Leaving the dragon to rot, he watched another monster eat the flesh, which caused it to rapidly evolve and become incredibly violent. That World Destroyer is far too strong, ready to wipe out the village. That's why Tyler needed a weaker beast for his little project. And that one-eyed boss was the perfect choice, he explains. He assumes they must be wondering why he wanted to unleash a monster on the village, save everyone as a hero, and then slay that beast. This dead dragon again. With that, he would have gained absolute power and global fame, but this armored lowlife ruined everything. Tyler simply cannot contain his boiling rage. Screaming in frustration, he snaps. Timothy asks if he did all this just for some pathetic, selfish goals. Tyler laughs in his face, calling him a fool. Any adventurer wants power, money, and beautiful women. With that strength, he could finally live exactly as he pleased. Timothy calls him a total idiot, absolutely furious that so many innocent people and good adventurers died just for one man's stupid desires, glaring daggers at Tyler. Timothy asks if he ever even cared, with no answer coming, asking his black armor to lend him its power, ready for battle. It was high time to bring that arrogant bastard right back down to earth. Tyler laughed mockingly, asking if this kid actually thought he could teach him a lesson, shouting that Timothy was just a nobody who shouldn't overestimate himself. The tyrant powered up his massive armor, Timothy watched his enemy charge, desperately trying to find a way to survive. He needed some kind of workaround to face a level 300 threat. At level 21, Timothy stood absolutely zero chance in a straight fight. But one single detail could save him, the dormant dragon core nearby. If he destroyed it, his armor would absorb the power of a level 300 beast. Desperate, Timothy asked his armor system if it had a ranged attack skill. He needed a skill right now. The system began searching. It would take precious seconds to process, but Tyler was already rushing him. Screaming that it was too late to beg for mercy, Tyler lunged forward. He slammed right into the spot where the boys were scrambling to dodge. The impact was massive, blasting Abe and Timothy far across the field. Caught in the shockwave, they spun wildly as Timothy crashed hard. He crashed into the dirt, smoke billowing off his armor in heavy clouds. Struggling to stand, he finally understood the true terror of a disaster rank hunter. Tyler had no intention of stopping, mocking Timothy for losing his mind. This was his end, but Timothy knew he had to act now. If this beating went on, Timothy was done for, but get this. Search complete, the system instantly suggested a brand new tactical option. Buy small grenades as a skill, but Timothy doubted that would work. He didn't think he had enough power to break the dragon's core. But the system told him he didn't need to break it himself. It suggested using poison knives instead to force a level increase. Timothy dragged himself up. Tyler grimaced, clearly annoyed that his target was standing. Furious, he barked that Timothy couldn't even stand straight, let alone fight. Timothy ignored the taunt, putting his complete faith in the armor system. He requested the small grenades. Tyler watched him, highly suspicious. The arrogant hunter actually hesitated, and honestly, who wouldn't? With the new skill loaded, Timothy grinned. Everything was about to change. He unleashed a volley of throwing knives straight at his opponent. Tyler didn't flinch. He burst out laughing at the pathetic attack. To him, it was child's play. Why throw knives if they miss completely? Timothy just smiled back. The former corpse collector replied that the hunter wasn't his target. He yelled out that he was aiming for the fallen dragon all along. Explode! Timothy triggered the command before Tyler could even react. Using his newly acquired skill, he initiated a massive chain reaction. The dead beast's core shattered completely. Tyler whipped his head around. Pure energy surged outward as the dragon's levels flooded into Timothy's armor. The system confirmed the massive upgrade, and Timothy instantly went on the offensive. He charged forward. The two warriors collided in a massive explosion of power. A brutal struggle of raw strength where neither side was willing to yield. Tyler is completely caught off guard. His opponent is only level 21. Timothy casually replies that things have changed. His level isn't that low anymore. He is sitting at level 301. Tyler's jaw drops. It all makes sense now. He finally understands. Timothy somehow managed to slay that massive beast. Tyler swings his blade again. It is all the brat's cheap tricks. Chaos erupts. He unleashes a heavy barrage, sending Timothy flying backward. Stopping to breathe, Tyler warns the kid not to mess with him. Does a single level difference make him think he can beat a veteran? He thinks he can handle a true catastrophe-ranked adventurer with massive battle experience. Tyler definitely doesn't think so, and he's happy to beat that lesson into him. Charging forward with absolute fury, Timothy effortlessly dodges the oncoming strike this time. In a flash, Timothy slips behind his back and lands a heavy blow. A sudden lightning punch. Stunned, Tyler barely blocks the strike. He blocks the swift counter. Their clashing blades create a massive shockwave. Dust kicks up. Timothy laughs at Tyler's talk of experience. An arrogant, greedy bastard like him does not deserve to speak. There is absolutely no way Timothy loses to this pathetic trash. Suddenly, Tyler's armor erupts with a massive wave of pulsing blue energy. Sensing immediate danger, Timothy leaps backward to put some distance between them. Tyler admits the kid has decent armor, but says his mouth is still too loud. He orders him to shut up. In an instant, Tyler prepares his ultimate move. Watch closely. Tyler activates his unique skill, Manifestation of the Crooked. With the skill active, Tyler instantly lunges forward with a crazed scream. He screams that this is his power. The corpse collector senses the danger. He knows that if he takes this massive energy wave head-on, he is dead. Timothy scrambles to the side, suddenly recognizing the Bloody God skill on screen. It is the same unique ability he saw on the system's item list. A A powerful move that can only be deployed once. Timothy barely dodges the strike. But dodging is only temporary. He desperately needs to come up with a counterplan. He quickly submits a purchase request, though Tyler thinks the kid is entirely helpless. Out of nowhere, Abe throws himself into the line of fire. The weak boy is instantly blasted away by the shockwave. He crashes hard, writhing in absolute agony on the ground. Groaning through the pain, Abe gasps that their friends died because of Tyler's cowardice. Tears streaming down his face, the kid begs Timothy to avenge them all. He screams for him to do it right now. Timothy promises he will. He immediately purchases the curse of the black armor. Tyler prepares to strike again. He lunges forward, determined to crush Timothy before the armor can fully activate. A system notification warns him that this powerful skill is a single-use purchase. It demands confirmation. Timothy agrees without a single moment of hesitation. With the deal finalized, the system presents a massive range of level costs. He can sacrifice as many levels as he wants for extra power. Timothy doesn't hesitate. He wants to boost his power to the absolute limit. He sacrifices 299 levels to ensure absolute, brutal victory. Leaving him with only level 100, the system accepts. At that exact second, a massive beam of golden energy shoots straight up into the sky through Timothy. Once the blinding light fades, Timothy's level plunges all the way down. It hits level 1. Tyler stares in utter disbelief, demanding to know what he just did. Realizing Timothy is back to level 1, Tyler laughs, mocking him for committing absolute suicide. Overwhelmed with dark excitement, Tyler can no longer hold back and charges right at him. Screaming that Timothy is a total idiot, the calm corpse collector barely even flinches. He quietly tells Tyler that victory is impossible, then activates his brand new skill. The curse of the black armor triggers, unleashing a wave of pure darkness in all directions. Mid-charge, Tyler suddenly freezes up, feeling his entire body lock in place. His immense power is rapidly draining away. Timothy just offers a cold, knowing smile. He explains that the curse of the black armor drains the opponent's power proportionally. It strips away the exact number of levels the user sacrifices to cast it. Since Timothy sacrificed 299 levels, Tyler is about to lose the exact same. Timothy asks his rival what level he thinks he has left. Tyler is absolutely furious. He refuses to believe this is anything but a sick joke. He screams at the boy, demanding to be released from the shadow binding immediately. Just like that, the entire playing field gets completely turned upside down. Both fighters are now reduced to level 1, stripping Tyler of his elite rank. The proud disaster rank adventurer is now completely powerless, no matter how much he rages. Overwhelmed by the intense shock, Tyler collapses onto the ground, completely exhausted. He desperately tries to convince himself that this nightmare is just impossible. Pointing at his pathetic status readings, he screams that this makes absolutely no sense. But no matter how loud he yells, the cold reality remains completely unchanged. He is level 1, 299 levels are gone forever. Tyler calls Timothy a bastard, boasting that his combat experience can still crush him. But before he can even put up a fight, Timothy strikes with blinding speed. Landing a heavy hit, Timothy mentions a certain corpse collector from Rakuru village. Because of his peculiar skill, that boy could never gain experience to level up. Buckling under the painful blows, Tyler screams at him to shut his mouth. He swings wildly in a desperate counterattack, but his slow moves are utterly useless. Timothy easily leaps back to a safe distance, continuing his calm, taunting story. He explains how being stuck at level 1 has actually made him completely invincible. Before Tyler can even react, Timothy flashes forward and cleanly severs his arm. Talk about a brutal blow. Still, Tyler stands, spitting insults and claiming it is not over. Timothy coldly disagrees. To him, the outcome of this battle was decided long ago. Outraged by the blatant disrespect, Tyler charges blindly, aiming straight for his opponent's back. Timothy calmly notes that Tyler has completely lost his ability to think straight. His enemy is acting entirely on blind, desperate rage. Turning around instantly, Timothy slashes the sword clean out of Tyler's grip. To seal his absolute victory, he follows up with a series of brutal, rapid strikes. The swift counterattack leaves Tyler collapsed on the dirt, bleeding out and unable to move. Moments later, Abe approaches Timothy, thanking him deeply for finally getting his promised revenge. Timothy waves it off, stating he has no need for any gratitude. He would never forgive Tyler anyway, making this brutal beatdown entirely inevitable. Even now, flat on his back, Tyler desperately refuses to accept his humiliating defeat. Tyler screamed at Timothy. He shouted that the kid had cut off his own right arm, thus driving himself into a dead end. The villain claimed he never wanted this, but soon other disaster-class adventurers would find out about this massive catastrophe. Gritting his teeth with his remaining strength, Tyler warned that if his daily activity stopped, suspicion would instantly grow. They would search. Still, the broken man struggled to stand. He spat that those incredibly annoying elite hunters were always way too curious. Naturally, they would want to know who defeated him and would quickly hunt Timothy down. Is the Black Knight finally dead? Timothy calmly answered that if anyone else challenged him, he would gladly fight them. Tyler sneered, warning the kid to pray he would actually get to live in peace. Halting his empty threats, the knight suddenly realized he had already lost far too much blood. Activating a rare skill, Tyler declared they would meet again. And check this out. Seeing this, Abe immediately screamed out that Tyler had activated a teleporter. Timothy dashed forward instantly while Abe yelled that they had to stop him. Tyler taunted that he would make Timothy regret leaving him alive. Timothy stared at the bright column of crimson energy shooting into the heavens, promising that next time he would finish the job, he would end it. Abe panicked, knowing Tyler would return soon with dangerous backups. But Timothy reassured his companion. Everything was going to be perfectly fine. They just needed to leave immediately. If Tyler ever crossed his path again, Timothy would crush him. Abe let out a massive sigh of relief, placing his complete trust in the young hero. Still, they had lost many brave allies in the fight, and the guild had to be notified of the tragic losses. But Timothy had one final important request for Abe. He needed him to listen, soon. Now look at this. They stood in the market, ready to depart, when Abe questioned the boy. Once more, he was certain he would not change his mind. Abe admitted that when Timothy first asked for a favor, he expected something completely legendary from a powerhouse. Instead, the young warrior merely asked to be guided to another city, proving he always kept people guessing. Timothy explained that while he wanted to stay and protect the local villagers, his presence had unfortunately drawn the dangerous gaze of highly destructive hunters. This forced him to act before things got even more out of hand. If he lingered, ruthless killers like Tyler would eventually find him and bring ruin. Timothy was determined to shield the innocent villagers from that kind of danger. After listening closely, Abe nodded in deep understanding, fully respecting his selfless choice. He agreed to help him all the way. After all, they had survived a literal destroyer of worlds, a massive feat worth being proud of. Abe added that he had already contacted the Adventurer Guild about the battle and Timothy. He held up his glowing magic communicator. Since Timothy was leaving, Abe had requested several elite guards to watch over the village instead. That would keep it safe. The two friends strolled along the market roads, completely unaware that a nervous Lindsay was secretly observing them from a distance. Visibly panicking, they finally reached the old merchant shop, but it was completely closed. It was likely his day off, so Abe asked if he wanted to bid farewell to anyone. If the owner were here, he could have easily arranged a different departure date. Timothy insisted they should just slip away. If his grandfather caught them, saying goodbye would be too painful. But it wasn't just about his grandfather. Timothy couldn't face the others either. Leaving Lindsay and Melissa behind without a word hurt, but he had to protect them. He would never forgive himself if his loved ones suffered just by being associated with him. As they reached the edge of the village, Abe stopped and looked back. He warned that leaving now meant Timothy wouldn't be able to return anytime soon. He asked one last time if the boy would regret it, but Timothy was resolute. He stepped forward, but a sudden shout stopped him. Standing right behind them was Timothy's grandfather, holding a neatly wrapped package. With a warm smile, the old man asked why he looked so miserable before a big journey. He admitted he had secretly found out about Timothy's departure. Gently, he handed over the package, refusing to take no for an answer. Inside was some freshly baked bread he had prepared especially for the long road ahead. Timothy bowed his head, apologizing for suddenly leaving everyone without warning. But his grandfather just laughed, waving off the apology and telling him to smile instead. He knew the boy must have a very good reason for setting off. After all, Timothy was an adventurer, and his grandfather had supported him from day one. The least the old man could do was send him off with a happy face. Not wanting to make him worry, Timothy forced a bright grin and said goodbye. With that final farewell, they finally turned their backs on the village. Abe remarked that the old man was truly kind, asking how the bread tasted. Taking a bite, Timothy smiled and said it was absolutely incredible. Abe nodded, stating their first stop had to be the city hosting his guild. They were heading straight for Durham, the southern headquarters of the Adventurers Guild. That was how Timothy left Rakura village behind for a brand new chapter. While walking down the road, the pair spotted trouble ahead. A band of armed goblins was raiding a traveling merchant cart right in front of them. Abe panicked, but Timothy remained completely calm, telling him to hold his coat. Handing over his belongings, the former corpse collector casually drew his deadly weapon. It was the perfect opportunity to grind some easy levels before reaching the city. He charged ahead to absorb their power. Honestly, these small fries did not pose any real threat. Most were level 1, and even their chief was only level 5. Abe watched eagerly. He couldn't wait to see the kids' true strength. Job done, they left a massive pile of monster corpses behind them. Their next destination was set. They pushed onward toward the city of Durham. A short walk later, they finally entered the bustling southern city. It sat proudly to the northeast of Rakura village. As they walked through the front gate, the massive crowd was overwhelming. Timothy was speechless. He stared in absolute awe at the sea of people. The lively city atmosphere was completely different from his quiet village home. But that was expected. Durham was one of the continent's largest hubs. Right in the center lay the southern headquarters of the Central Council. It was a legendary gathering place, home to countless top-tier heroes. Abe walked inside, ready to introduce Timothy to this massive new world. He explains that the city is actually crawling with high-tier adventurers, just like Timothy. Surrounded by all these heavy hitters, Timothy will blend right in. Unless, of course, he boosts his level again, the young man just smiles. Hearing this, right now, he is sitting at level 110. There is no rush to climb higher. He looks over, thanking Abe for the solid advice. Truth is, on their trek to Durham, he actually got a quick power boost by absorbing goblin mana. That is when Abe warns him to hold off on leveling up. Timothy wonders why, and the veteran explains that a sudden massive gap in power will draw some serious trouble. Just think about what happens if he wanders around the streets. Sitting at level 300, people will mistake him for a walking natural disaster. Timothy admits that such a crazy status would definitely put a target on his back. Abe points out that if the public discovers he is the rookie who single-handedly crushed Tyler, challengers will line up to fight him. High-ranking fighters are notoriously weird, and the last thing Timothy needs is a bunch of overpowered creeps hunting him down. Keeping a low profile is definitely the smart move. Abe spots a rabbit nearby and muses that comrades should support, not fight each other. Their real duty is to protect the peace of regular folks. Hearing this, Timothy is deeply moved. He truly respects Abe's noble outlook. Most fighters out there only chase after quick cash and cheap fame. Just like Tyler did, Timothy silently vows to follow Abe's kind, heroic path. Instead, having insane strength is one thing, but mastering how to use it responsibly is what actually counts. He needs to grow into his power. As they keep walking down the bustling streets, Timothy asks about their final destination. Abe laughs nervously, realizing he forgot to mention the plan. First, they must deliver the official report regarding the World Destroyer threat directly to the main guild headquarters. Soon, they arrive at the massive hall and step up to a receptionist who welcomes them with a smile. She asks which mission they are here to report on today. Abe explains that he already uploaded all the details through his communicator. Hearing this, she promises to hand over the reward right away. She kindly requests the name of the specific quest they just wrapped up. After a brief pause, Abe speaks up. It is the Rakura village incident. The dread of the World Destroyer. Instantly, the girl's face goes pale. Her friendly smile vanishes. She turns and walks off, whispering to herself that she will fetch the reward immediately. Moments later, heavy gold pouches hit the counter. This is the prize pool. But then she adds that since the rest of Abe's party was wiped out, the whole sum goes entirely to him. Abe just stands there, completely speechless and numb. Looking at his hollow expression, Timothy finally understands why his companion was so quiet and miserable during the journey. The crushing weight of survival torments him daily. This overwhelming guilt of being the sole survivor is eating him alive. Abe quietly grabs the gold while the receptionist bows. and offers her deepest sympathies as they head back out to the street. Timothy asks his quiet friend what that girl just told him. Abe hesitates before answering. He admits his squad members are dead, and as their leader, he must take responsibility. He is responsible for their lives. The two step outside and Abe freezes. The young leader sighs. Word of his failure travels fast. He never wanted his mess to drag Timothy down, but the angry crowd ahead has already taken away that choice. Cruel adventurers gather, demanding blood. They scream for him to face the grieving families and hand over his reward money. Abe decides to absorb all their fury. After all, he was the leader. Because of his critical error, his entire squad perished on that field. No matter how much he wishes to run or how deeply he regrets it, he is prepared to face every single accusation. None of it changes his guilt. The furious mob presses closer, screaming for answers and throwing insults. To them, he is just a coward who got his people killed. Facing their absolute hatred, Abe takes a deep breath. He raises his voice, admitting that he takes complete blame for the tragedy. He confesses he was entirely powerless to save his squad from their grim fate. Tears well up in his eyes as he repeats that they all died. A loud voice cuts through the noise, screaming that regrets mean absolutely nothing. But then the challenger's rage breaks, turning into pure, raw grief. He weeps, shouting that those lost warriors were the best of them. How could elite fighters fall to a level 150 flame dragon? Timothy watches this, his head spinning in disbelief. They are all completely wrong. It did not happen that way at all. They fought a level 300 world destroyer, an impossible nightmare. No normal adventurer could ever survive that absolute devastation. He cannot stand this slander for another second. He yells out that everyone is wrong. He wants to scream the truth, but Abe quickly cuts him off. Without looking back, Abe whispers his gratitude for the defense, but insists Timothy must remain silent. He truly blames his own choices. If he had only ordered the village evacuation sooner, they would live. He believes he could have saved everyone if he acted faster back then. A harsh voice from the crowd interrupts their quiet exchange. A fierce warrior steps forward, demanding to know what they are whispering about. He accuses Abe of sacrificing his comrades just to claim the reward. The moment those foul words leave his mouth, Timothy rushes forward. He screams that Abe would never commit such a cowardly, selfish act. But the massive man glares down at him, roaring for him to shut up. Timothy refuses to back down, yelling that he is no stranger. He fought right alongside Abe against that terrifying, level 300 threat. This massive, shocking claim instantly sends a wild murmur through the stunned crowd. If it is true, their survival is nothing short of a miracle. The giant inspects the boy to prove he is lying. But a moment later, he freezes, shocked to see they are the same level. This giant is named Will, currently sitting at level 110. He doubts someone at that rank could ever survive against a level 3 monster. Timothy keeps the details to himself, simply answering that he had his reasons. This vague response only triggers harsh laughter and a furious reaction. His opponent thinks the kid is just making up cheap lies. The massive brute barks at Timothy to beat it, but Timothy stands his ground. Neither side is backing down. In a flash, blades are drawn from their sheaths. They clash in an instant. The heavy impact kicks up a thick cloud of dust. Shielding his face, Abe begs Timothy to stop, crying that this is all on him. He failed to save his comrades and considers himself a terrible leader. But the fierce duel keeps raging on, completely ignoring Abe's desperate cries. Neither fighter has any intention of stepping back. Timothy yells out. He shouts that the rumors aren't true and his friends didn't all perish. Pressing his assault, Timothy argues that no one could have predicted this tragedy. Abe stood right beside his allies until the very end, facing death head-on. He never turned his back or abandoned the people who trusted him. With a blindingly fast strike, Timothy disarms his massive opponent completely. The heavy sword clatters away, burying itself deep in the cracked stone pavement. Timothy points out that a greedy traitor wouldn't grieve like this over fallen friends. A real backstabber wouldn't shed genuine tears for his lost squad. Abe was a great captain, but if he wants to carry that guilt, Timothy won't stop him. Still, Timothy thinks it's foolish to blame yourself for things beyond your control. Sometimes tragic events are just entirely out of anyone's hands. That is exactly why Timothy wants to free Abe from these dark thoughts. He looks at his friend, calling him a leader who never abandoned his crew. a true leader who stayed behind to avenge his fallen squad mates. With teary eyes, Abe looks up at the boy in utter disbelief. He quietly asks why Timothy is going to such lengths to help him out. Reaching his hand out, Timothy explains that Abe is the ideal hero he looks up to. But the sore loser of a giant refuses to accept his swift defeat. Oh man, the brute draws a hidden dagger and lunges at Timothy's back. Timothy spins around, but the lethal threat is neutralized before he can react. A stylish adventurer presses a sharp blade right against Will's thick neck. This sudden arrival puts Timothy on high alert immediately. He senses an incredibly intense pressure radiating from this mysterious newcomer. But Abe quickly steps in, telling Timothy to lower his weapon because it is okay. The stranger is actually an ally, an elite member of their guild. This is the elite warrior Lyle, a level 200 powerhouse of the Salvation Guild. Timothy breathes a sigh of relief, knowing this powerful warrior is on their side. Lyle looks closer, asking if this is the famous Timothy he heard about. He brings up the legendary clash where they fought the Destroyer of Worlds. Together they did the impossible and took down that colossal threat, but that is not all. Lyle mentions they even crossed paths with that absolute scoundrel Tyler. Stunned, Timothy wonders how Lyle knows so much, and Abe speaks up. Abe explains that he reported everything that transpired in the village. He submitted a full report about Tyler to the High Council. It was Tyler's greed that let the Destroyer of Worlds escape death in the first place. That massive delay caused endless chaos, but thanks to Timothy, they somehow pulled through. They took down the dragon, something totally avoidable if Tyler had just crushed the core. He knew it perfectly well. That is exactly why they put a bounty on his head. Now, Lyle says he just got back. He was away on a long expedition, completely unable to rush back and help them out. Once the journey ended, Abe filled him in on every single detail of the disaster. The second the guild leader heard the truth, he rushed back as fast as he could. He headed straight for Durham, only to find a crowd of angry idiots looking for blood. They are blaming the squad leader for those deaths, without even knowing what actually happened. Complete ignorance, but Lyle, he knows this heavy grief all too well. No amount of money or sweet words can bring back the lives they lost out there. Still, they are all adventurers. Their real duty is to keep the peace and stay strong. Keep people calm, that is the goal. Clenching his fist, he continued. Adventurers risk everything for others, and those young souls knew the dangers. They chose this brutal path. It was their own choice, their own fate. Now this crowd is just shifting the blame onto the survivors. They fought beside their comrades until the very end, and they deserve better than this. With those heavy words, Lyle made it clear that the discussion was officially over. Timothy had stayed quiet the whole time, but now he leaned over to ask Abe. Is he actually a good guy? Abe told him not to worry, though the boss is tough. He is a strict leader. Once the noisy crowd finally cleared out, Lyle faced Abe directly. Once the crowd cleared, Lyle turned to Abe with a cold look. Without hesitation, he flatly kicked him out of the guild right then. Clearing up rumors does not excuse such terrible incompetence. He refused to let a leader who got his entire squad killed stay in their ranks. This was the Sword of Salvation, after all, the absolute strongest guild in Durham. Timothy was stunned. Was Abe seriously part of the most elite group in town? Lyle offered a quiet apology, admitting he had no other choice in the matter. He braced for an argument, but Abe just nodded, accepting the harsh decision calmly. Abe had no complaints, but he did want to ask for one last favor. Placing a firm hand on Timothy's shoulder, he asked Lyle to recruit the young candidate. With the right allies by his side, the kid could do incredible things for Durham. Abe truly believed in him, knowing Timothy had the makings of an elite adventurer. Even with Abe kicked out, Timothy had a massive future ahead. Just as Lyle started to nod in agreement, Timothy cut right into the conversation. He flatly refused the offer. Watching his friend get kicked out permanently was something he simply would not allow. Besides, he would never join a faction that happily abandons its own people. Abe tried to quiet him down, urging him to take this golden opportunity for support. He knew Timothy wanted to protect people, and the guild was his best shot. If he wanted to make a real difference, he had to take this path. Hearing this, Timothy made a sudden, bold decision right then and there. He would just build his own guild from scratch. Later, the two walked together. They silently made their way through the narrow, stone streets of Durham. Traveling light, they eventually stopped right in front of a heavily ruined tower. Timothy stood there completely stunned, staring up at the incredibly sketchy-looking building. He looked over at Abe, asking if this was truly the right spot. Abe just nodded. He confirmed it, telling Timothy that this very place is where their guild legend begins. This tower will serve as their official base, despite its pretty questionable appearance. Abe wanted to thank Timothy one more time for inviting him to join the new group. Timothy had announced his new guild right after Abe was kicked out. In the very next moment, Timothy became the first member of this new guild. They did it right in front of Lyle. Timothy knew he still had so much to learn. He really did not want Abe thanking him. Timothy knew that to reach Abe's level, he needed help. To become a truly elite adventurer, he would gladly take any advice Abe could offer. He also knew that even though they had a headquarters, it was basically a total wreck. They had to rebuild the entire place from scratch, which was no easy task. They were not an official guild yet, and their pockets were almost completely empty. Abe admitted that buying this building took almost every single coin they had. Their massive reward for defeating the Destroyer of Worlds went mostly to the victims' families. Abe thought his share would easily cover everything, but he made a huge miscalculation. He miscalculated big time, and trust me, things only got crazier. The boy opened an old closet and got blasted by a massive cloud of dust. They spent their very last coins on this place. Talk about a rough start. Armed only with dirty rags and buckets of water, they had to start cleaning up. It was time for some serious deep cleaning, but things immediately went sideways. Just a few minutes in, Abe was already shouting at Timothy to watch out. Timothy was washing the floor, slipped on the wet wood, and went flying. He landed face first in a giant puddle, which made both of them crack up. They laughed so hard they could barely breathe, but it got Timothy thinking. Ever since he got his armor, his entire life had been one constant battlefield. He really missed these quiet, peaceful moments, but the peace did not last long. The front door suddenly swung open, and a woman's voice called out. Timothy scrambled to his feet, absolutely shocked to see Lindsay and Melissa standing there. They looked deeply concerned, but Lindsay immediately started shouting at him. She accused him of running away, while Melissa whimpered that he left without saying goodbye. Without even waiting for an explanation, both girls suddenly lunged at him together. Meanwhile, a panicked adventurer was sprinting through the city streets at full speed. He carried an incredibly urgent message for anyone who could hold a sword. Every available warrior in Durham had to head to the western gate right now. A few fighters answered the call, bracing themselves outside the western wall. They waited anxiously for the horde of monsters rushing straight toward them. The first volunteers out the gate saw a massive beast chewing on a helpless victim. The poor guy was begging for his life, but it was already too late. Horrified adventurers froze in place, completely overwhelmed by the massive enemy forces. The beast swallowed its meal and smiled. Not gonna lie, this looks bad. Back at the tower, Lindsay and Melissa kept badgering Timothy with endless questions. They demanded to know why he had abandoned their peaceful little village like that. Timothy was completely overwhelmed by the dual interrogation from these two furious girls. Suddenly, a distant alarm cut through the noise as someone screamed that monsters arrived. Summons echoed from the western gate. Every adventurer who heard had to go. Timothy breathed a deep sigh, relief. He turned to Abe. It was time to move. Heading over, he turned to the girls. Timothy promised them an explanation later. He would explain why he left the village. For now, they had to wait. He needed Melissa and Lindsay to stay safe. Without waiting, he bolted. Timothy rushed straight for the exit. Their first mission as the new Durham Guild was officially beginning now. Meanwhile, the first wave of adventurers outside faced an absolute nightmare of monsters. One colossal beast was crushing people underfoot. The sounds were terrifying. A level 210 desert curse monster charged in. He was level 110. To him, these beasts were nothing. They were just impudent puppies. These level 20 cursed nomads were weak, but their numbers were huge. Skeletons armed with swords kept pushing the defenders back. Still, Will stood firm. He yelled that they would never overwhelm him. He charged forward, refusing to let any numbers disadvantage stop his blade. Within minutes, the skeletons were done. They were completely wiped out. He wondered where old Lyle was. His ally had absolutely no idea. If this keeps up, Will grunted, they would have to attack without him. But he was too distracted. He lost all vigilance. He completely failed to notice the giant beast creeping up behind him. He finally spun around, only to freeze in sheer horror. Countless glowing blue energy spheres soared high into the sky above them. Instantly, they rained down, the magic locked onto every single adventurer. Their bodies went completely limp, they were all totally paralyzed. No damage was dealt yet, but Will knew a terrifying curse had just landed. This was the dreaded desert curse. His limbs suddenly refused to move. He was frozen completely stiff, forced to watch the skeletons close in on him. Honestly, it looked like game over for him, especially with them closing in. Suddenly, Timothy charged in. He completely shattered the nearest skeleton. With one massive, shattering blow, he smashed it to absolute pieces. Instantly, Timothy's system pinged him. Another level had been absorbed. He called to Abe, who was busy clearing out a skeleton group nearby. Timothy yelled out that it was time for both of them to level up. Perfect targets lay everywhere. There was no shortage of opportunities. Abe agreed, telling him to unleash his full power without hesitation. And seriously, skeletal heads started rolling like falling apples from trees. The system's level notifications could barely keep up with his rapid kills. Soon, Timothy reached level 250. Abe took over. Abe would handle the rest. Timothy knew his partner had his back. Now only one target remained, the giant boss monster casting the curses. Several fallen adventurers were already suffering under its binding spell. Charging forward, Timothy yelled that this beast would suffer its own magic. Smiling, the boy promised to give the giant monster a taste of despair. He was incredibly eager to see how it would handle its own curse. Meanwhile, Lyle, whom no one could find, slipped outside the city walls through the eastern gate. Knowing about the massive horde at the western gate, he decided to check this side too, never imagining he would face another massive army. Waiting right in front of him, suddenly the lead beast and Lyle locked eyes. The system showed our adventurer was 10 levels lower than this desert fiend. The cursed monster immediately conjured glowing energy spheres, but Lyle just shrugged it off. He just smiled. Even together, these beasts stood absolutely zero chance of winning. No one defeats Lyle, period. The guild master admitted this beast was a worthy catch, but unfortunately, no army on Earth could ever hope to bring Lyle down. Then, he triggered his legendary demonic coming skill, declaring their lives would end in 5 seconds. Meanwhile, over at the western gate, Timothy battled his own desert cursed boss, shouting that the monster's time was up. Time to feel the curse, and Timothy struck hard, severing a giant limb. He mocked the beast, wondering how it would survive a real opponent like him. This boss was level 210, but Timothy was level 250. Right after slicing the first arm, a second limb slammed into the dirt. Timothy had no plans of stopping. Desert nomads rushed to aid their alpha, launching a surprise attack from behind. That speed might work on normal warriors. But Timothy was too fast. He easily sidestepped and initiated a lethal counter-strike. He felt pretty disappointed. Was this really all they could do? They had no chance, and they knew it. They were dead meat. Right then, he effortlessly absorbed another massive level, making it quite easy to climb to level 290. Talk about an absolute cheat code. But there was still one massive obstacle left, a giant monster desperate to kill him. The beast lashed out with its remaining claws, trying to grab him. But Timothy deftly slipped past, sensing it could not touch the fast warrior. The beast unleashed a barrage of magical energy balls right at him. Watching from afar, Abe panicked and yelled a warning to his friend, screaming not to let those dangerous projectiles hit him, but Timothy just smiled, activating his glowing sword, telling Abe that he had everything under control. Instantly, a solid protective energy shield enveloped him, completely blocking the boss attacks. The pair were so focused on the fight, they completely missed the shocked stares of nearby adventurers gathered in the area, including Will, while the conscious adventurers tried to figure out exactly who this incredibly powerful new warrior was. Will instantly recognized the same punk he clashed with in the square. After a fast combination of lightning-quick strikes, the giant beast collapsed. Losing the glowing fluid that kept it alive, Timothy stood over it, demanding to know if cursing so many innocent victims made it happy. Not that its answer mattered. Either way, this fiend was dying today. Suddenly, the dying monster shot hundreds of magical energy spheres high above. Hanging motionless in the sky, Timothy stood there completely baffled. With one final screeching cry, the magical spheres shot directly toward the city of Durham. Timothy cursed his own stupid mistake for letting his guard down. With a single blow, he splits the skull of the desert cursed, Right then, Timothy realizes something. The terrifying curse of this monster was actually aimed straight at the city of Durham. High above, local residents watch in horror as strange, unexplained objects hurtle down toward them. Nobody knows what they are, but Timothy realizes these innocent people are the primary targets. It is clear as day, the beast's horrific plan is already unfolding. Its dark scheme has already begun to bear fruit. As Timothy tries to process the shock, a sudden system notification blares in front of him. He has absorbed the level of the Desert Cursed. He is now level 500. Having finished off his opponents, Abe walks up to Timothy with some pretty grim news. The monster itself is not the real threat, it is the curse, and it is incredibly nasty. Breaking it is nearly impossible, and anyone infected is basically marked for a slow, agonizing death. Thanks to that final blast, most of the townspeople are now infected. Timothy desperately asks if there is anyone around who can actually cure them. But Abe shakes his head, only high-ranking mages have a shot at cleansing this. And here is the catch, you are not going to like these odds. Within Durham's strongest guild, the Sword of Salvation, only 3 mages have this power. Timothy is stunned, only 3 top-tier wizards in this entire massive city. Abe nods solemnly, confirming those 3 are the only hope against a curse this dark. Suddenly, their conversation is cut short as a group of newcomers rushes onto the scene. They run straight to the stricken adventurers, frantically asking how they are holding up. These are the very mages, and they urge the suffering victims to stay strong. Help is on the way, one of the healers calls out to a woman named Helen. He warns her that this curse is far worse than they anticipated. But they still have a narrow window of opportunity to save these brave fighters. Helen rushes over, shouting for everyone to focus on stabilizing the most critical patients first. She declares she will not let anyone die on her watch today. As a high-ranking sorceress of the Sword of Salvation, she means every word. Abe looks on, quietly pointing out that these are indeed the legendary 3 mages. But there is a massive problem. The sheer number of victims is growing exponentially by the second. At this rate, their incredible magic simply will not be fast enough. They are racing against a clock they cannot beat. Suddenly, Helen staggers back, gasping. She clutches her hand, completely baffled by the dark, heavy nature of this corruption. She can break it, yes, but the process is going to take way too much time. And it gets worse, it is not just her fellow adventurers who are suffering here. Most victims are local residents, and Helen feels a deep duty to save them. Suddenly, a massive beam of pure, radiant energy erupts right next to her. It shoots straight into the injured adventurer she was trying to heal. Timothy knows that showing off this kind of power will draw some highly dangerous attention. He might face disaster-ranked figures, but he simply cannot just walk away. These people are dying, and he has the exact tool needed to save them. His level conversion triggers, granting him the unique skill Heavenly Good. He quietly asks Abe if he is doing the right thing, and Abe just offers a warm smile. Abe chuckles, why even ask? Saving lives is always the right thing to do. With a nod, Timothy activates his skill again, targeting the next fallen warrior. Warm, miraculous light begins to spread, touching every single cursed soul on the battlefield. Helen stared in pure shock at the adventurer Timothy. She could not believe this kid had actually cured every single injured hunter. Looking back at him, she demanded to know his identity, but Timothy had no time. He brushed off the question, promising Helen that they would talk later. Right now, a terrible curse was still tearing through the city of Durham. Heading toward the western gate, Timothy told her they needed to save the locals. Helen immediately agreed to help, quickly catching up with her new companions. She proudly declared herself one of the strongest mages in the entire guild. Saving the victims was her duty. Meanwhile, inside the city borders, things were grim. The Desert Curse had already taken over almost every single citizen. Timothy quickly activated his power. They had very little time before people started dying. Moments later, he checked his system monitor, feeling the weight of his previous mistake. He wanted to save everyone, so he prepared a special skill. The system processed his request to activate the legendary Heavenly Blessing. The skill was fully ready. Meanwhile, over at the eastern gate, Lyle stood victorious. He finished his battle against the massive alpha monster and smoothly sheathed his blade. Looking up, he realized someone else was also working hard. Timothy was running at absolute maximum speed through the chaotic streets of Durham. He spread his healing magic to every infected person he passed by. Helen could barely keep up with his pace, checking on the fallen residents. She checked on the bewildered people, asking if they were all right. Slowly, the victims started to wake up and speak. Helen was absolutely stunned by what she was witnessing. The mysterious young man had completely wiped out the deadly curse. To her, it was pure genius, but Abe was not so optimistic. Honestly, looking at this crowd, you have to wonder if anyone could save them. Soon, Timothy realized his current efforts just were not enough. He was only clearing a tiny fraction of the plague, so he consulted his armor. He desperately asked the system if there was a way to expand his magic radius. The system accepted his request and searched for a viable solution. As Timothy kept running, the system recommended utilizing a special territory expansion. This technique would massively amplify his current active spell. He quickly unlocked Wings of Seraphim, an upgraded version of his holy magic. It would imbue his weapon with sacred light to cleanse the entire district. With the system waiting for confirmation, Timothy knew he could not delay any longer. He triggered the ability. Instantly, a brilliant blue light swallowed the surroundings. A magnificent winged sword materialized in his grip as the holy magic surged. Timothy commanded the system to execute the wide-range cleansing spell immediately. An absolute pillar of light erupted from his blade, shooting into the sky. It shattered into countless beams, seeking out and enveloping every single victim. A blinding glow covered the whole city. Abe and Helen finally caught up. They stared at the breathtaking sight, absolutely speechless. Helen was completely stunned. She was witnessing true holy magic right in front of her. She eagerly asked if he was just an ordinary adventurer or actually a saint. Timothy smiled, saying he was no saint, but he would save everyone he could. Of Durham, unfortunately, he was still just an ordinary adventurer. Timothy desperately needed Abe's advice before making any big decisions. Folding his arms shyly, the boy admitted he might have gone too far. He wanted to save the citizens, but completely forgot to hide his powers. Now elite catastrophe-rank adventurers were bound to investigate this place. The kid needed a cover story fast. Abe smiled, looking at Helen. She had no clue what he meant, but Abe had a simple plan. They would just pin all of Timothy's heroic deeds on this cute mage girl. Once the curse was lifted and everyone healed, a crowd gathered outside the guild. They eagerly waited for their hero, and soon enough, Helen stepped through the doors. The light made her look divine. Citizens cheered, chanting praises for the lady who saved Durham from the nightmare. She was their new savior, the hero to whom they owed everything. Sometime later, back at Central Headquarters, the exhausted girl filed her official report on the entire chaotic incident. She confirmed that she played her part exactly as they had agreed. They kept the monsters at bay while she supposedly cured everyone with holy magic. Timothy was incredibly grateful to the young mage for taking the fall. Ultimately, he avoided becoming the mysterious hero who saved the city alone. Instead, Abe came up with the perfect cover story just in time. It would credit everything to Helen, widely known as the strongest mage around. Nobody would suspect a thing. And trust me, writing that false report was going to be stressful. The boys promised to help her write it, and Timothy apologized once more. He felt terrible for dumping all this unwanted fame on her shoulders. But Helen reassured him, knowing the kid had saved everyone from absolute horror. She considered this small favor a fair repayment for him saving the victims. From now on, she promised he could absolutely count on her for any help. The boys grinned, loving the sound of that. Abe then noted something interesting. The guild was already attracting more recruits, thanks to her legendary savior status. Blushing, she told him to keep quiet, clearly hating that embarrassing new title. Abe shrugged it off, since Helen was already their top-tier mage. Being crowned their divine savior actually made a lot of sense. To make this work, they had to stop pretending and truly believe the lie. A public heroine gave the citizens hope that they were always safe. They needed to believe someone powerful like Helen was watching over them. Both guys agreed that Timothy was way too awkward to play the part. So Abe declared that Helen was simply destined for this massive responsibility. The girl blushed deeply, finding the whole concept of a role ridiculous. She wasn't an actress, after all. Timothy nervously asked Abe if this plan would actually succeed, and Abe confidently nodded without a second thought. With Timothy's cheat-like powers backing her up from the shadows, they would easily turn Helen into a living legend across the land. The poor girl couldn't stand their ridiculous, grand schemes, but they ignored her. Grabbing her hand, Abe dragged her away to talk, with Timothy trailing closely behind. Timothy had to grant the girl holy power so the townspeople wouldn't suspect a thing. To keep up Helen's status as a divine savior, she needed actual divinity. Sudden fear flashed in her eyes as she looked up at him. Helen asked how exactly he planned to transfer his holy power to her. Was he going to blast her with light? Timothy offered a quick apology. He promised it wouldn't hurt her at all, so she could relax. But if Helen truly objected, he would respect her choice immediately. They could just walk away. After a brief pause, she nodded in agreement. She had promised to help, and Timothy had already saved so many lives. She trusted his judgment completely. Stepping closer, the young man smiled. He thanked her for her trust. Now it was time to begin. A second later, a brilliant golden light completely engulfed the girl. The sheer force nearly pushed her back as he summoned his seraphim wings. Passing the power to his new ally, the transformation was complete. Soon the crowd was lifting Helen up. They cheered for their shining savior. Abe nudged Timothy with a grin. He asked if Timothy could stop spinning the poor girl around so much. Timothy admitted controlling the flight skill was still incredibly difficult for him. Then he noticed something. Abe seemed to be genuinely enjoying this chaos. Nobody else actually knew their secret, making the situation even funnier. Still, Timothy had drawn too much attention and needed to stay low. Their quiet chat was cut short. Lyle suddenly appeared right behind them. He asked if he was interrupting. Abe froze, staring in absolute terror. Seeing his former guild leader here was a massive, unexpected shock. Ignoring their panic, Lyle quietly asked Timothy to step aside with him. Clinging to his heavy holy sword, Timothy could only nod nervously. Lyle admitted he wasn't a fool, despite what they might think of him. He knew exactly who had actually saved the town of Durham. And it certainly wasn't Helen. Timothy realized his cover was totally blown. He had hoped to keep things secret. Lyle glanced at the crowd. Watching them toss Helen in celebration, he said he wouldn't judge them. A public hero needed to be someone the locals already knew and trusted. But other adventurers had spotted the duo fighting at the Western Gate. Members from various different guilds had witnessed their incredible strength in action. Abe found it hard to believe Lyle had come just for that. Why would a leader bother with such a detail? Surely a powerful man like him had a much bigger reason to speak with them in private. Lyle shook his head, explaining he didn't care who saw Timothy fight. He wasn't there to lecture him. Abe backed away, and trust me, the tension is real. He couldn't figure out what the guild master actually wanted from them. Lyle pointed out that while they defended the West, things were different elsewhere. They had no idea what was currently unfolding at the Eastern Gate. It was true they were completely in the dark about the other side. They waited anxiously for details. Lyle wasn't surprised by their ignorance. Whatever had occurred at that Eastern Gate was a heavily guarded secret. It was quickly hushed up because only Sword of Salvation members were there. After thinking it over for a bit, Abe finally decided to ask a question. He was curious about Durham's other side, making Lyle look over sternly. He told the boys that a massive horde of cursed monsters had gathered at the Western Gate, but the Eastern Gate faced the same threat. A matching monster army was waiting there, meaning it was all planned. This shocking news left Timothy feeling both completely outraged and deeply surprised. Right away, he asked if anyone had died at the Eastern Gate. Lyle told him not to worry since he had been right there. He wiped out the entire horde in time, keeping everyone completely safe. Such incredible strength was expected from the absolute top adventurer on the continent. Lyle checked the gates. Honestly, without his direct help, they never would have survived that brutal assault. But he warned them that a far bigger issue lay ahead. The guild leader believed this coordinated, two-pronged attack was fully intentional. Simple monsters just cannot plan something this complex alone. This level of coordination meant a human mastermind was definitely calling the shots. Hearing this, the boys went dead silent. They had never considered how monsters actually think, leaving Abe quietly deep in his own thoughts. After pondering it over, Abe agreed that many aspects of this attack made zero sense. He had lived in Durham for ages, but had never seen beasts like these. Their strange behavior was unsettling, prompting him to ask other local adventurers for answers. He asked if anyone had witnessed anything similar, but got nothing. Absolutely no one had ever run into creatures quite like this before. When Timothy asked if it was truly that rare, Abe confirmed the truth. These specific monsters definitely do not belong in this region. You cannot miss them, especially with their massive size and hostility. It was a total mystery how they ended up near Durham at all. Hearing them out, Lyle stepped in to summarize the situation. Basically, someone summoned them. A powerful mage could easily build this entire army. Timothy was stunned. Someone genuinely wanted to wipe their city off the map. If someone was really behind this insidious plot, they had to prepare. To stop this hidden enemy, every adventurer needed to step up their defenses immediately. And that was the exact conversation Lyle was waiting to have with them. He urged Timothy to officially form his new guild without wasting another second. They had to stand side by side with the Sword of Salvation, but Abe worried. They could not officially register, yet because of an endless mountain of paperwork. But Lyle quickly offered his help, promising to handle the bureaucratic nightmare himself. He would pull strings with the central government, but wanted a favor. He demanded two promises from Timothy. First, a vow to support their future alliance. The second condition was a personal test to prove Timothy's raw strength. Lyle wanted a quick training duel to see if the kid could actually fight. He wanted to see if the boy had what it took, asking if he accepted. Without a single second of hesitation, Timothy eagerly agreed to the terms. The legendary guild leader was seriously impressed by the boy's absolute determination. They stood inside the central council building of the Adventurers Guild, ready for action. Down at the training grounds, Lyle gave Timothy free rein over any weapon. He wanted to see what this dark horse could really do under pressure. It was time to trade blows with real steel and zero holding back. A brilliant blue aura flared around Lyle, signaling his absolute serious intent. He silently dared the young fighter to step up and show his worth. Timothy answered in kind, his fiery red aura painting his half of the hall. Abe Muth stood between them, waiting for the perfect moment to signal the start. The instant his hand dropped, both fighters exploded forward with blinding speed. The clash of masters began. The head of the Sword of Salvation Guild was ready. He genuinely hoped the kid had what it took to survive. Metal shrieked on metal as they traded rapid offensive and defensive strikes. But the sheer gap between them was hard to ignore right now. Even with all his hard-earned skills, Timothy was only at level 100. Meanwhile, Lyle, the powerful guild master, was sitting comfortably at level 200. From the very beginning, Timothy knew winning this sparring match was impossible. No one would blame him for dreading this clash. Bridging a 100-level gap simply was not going to happen. Lyle knew this truth all too well, but the challenge was already set. The former corpse collector realized his goal was not about winning anymore. He just had to give this legendary master everything he had and show his absolute best. If Lyle wanted a real show, he was going to get one. Timothy lunged forward, somehow piercing right through Lyle's tight guard. He crossed blades with the master, but his effort was instantly shut down. His sword spun out of his grip, leaving him gritting his teeth in frustration. He had never been disarmed this fast, but the fight was not over yet. Summoning the Sword of Seraphim, he struck again, forcing Lyle to dodge narrowly. He pressed the attack again, weaving through a completely unpredictable path. Yet with one lightning-swift strike, Lyle easily disarmed him once more. Still, Lyle could not help but admire the boy's relentless grit. Refusing to waste a moment, Timothy drew a dagger and lunged once more. If his main weapons failed, he would just keep striking with whatever remained. He rained down rapid, desperate slashes, hoping just one would land. Lyle easily leaped back to safety, untouched and completely unbothered. Timothy immediately hurled a dagger at him, but it was a desperate move. Master batted it away like a toy, thinking the assault was incredibly naive. But that distraction was exactly what Timothy wanted. He reclaimed the Sword of Seraphim and leaped high into the air. No matter the 100-level gap, he was going to make this count. He aimed to give the legendary master a fight he would actually enjoy. He dove down with his blade, pointed straight at his opponent. A massive burst of energy erupted, sending shattered stone flying everywhere. Watching from the sidelines, Abe could not help but grin. The young adventurer's growth was absolutely undeniable now. He stared at the young warrior, who landed safely on the ground amidst the smoke and flames. As the smoke cleared, Timothy stared at the crater left by his final punch. He knew deep down that this was the absolute limit of his current strength. Would Lyle be impressed? 10 seconds ticked away in silence. Then the smoke slowly parted, Out stepped Lyle, bloody and visibly shaken. He glared. If their levels were not so far apart, he muttered. That direct blow would have killed him right then and there. Still, Timothy had real grit. His fighting skills were truly impressive. But playtime was over. Lyle announced they were moving to Phase 2. This round, Timothy had to defend. The air suddenly felt freezing cold. Timothy froze. Why did his opponent look so incredibly murderous? Abe noticed the sudden shift, too. Lyle was playing for keeps now. He was preparing to use a legendary skill. Right then, the ground trembled. The demonic coming skill activated, sending shockwaves ripping through the arena. Lyle laughed like a maniac, shouting that this was a death match. If Timothy could not stop him, he would die in 15 seconds. Timothy recognized the legendary tier activation, but did not realize its scale. He had no clue how powerful his opponent was about to become. Abe screamed at him to watch out, desperately trying to warn his friend. This insane skill literally doubles the owner's level for 15 seconds. Timothy was stunned. Did that mean Lyle was level 400 now? Unfortunately, Abe was entirely right. Survival was about to become an absolute nightmare. Lyle was transforming, overflowing with an unbelievable surge of raw power. His deep voice thundered across the room. He roared that his blood was boiling. He had not felt this excited in ages. This fight was originally just a simple test of Timothy's limits. But now he wanted to squeeze every drop of fun out of these seconds. He was absolutely delighted. The boy had met all of his high expectations. The sleeping demon inside the guild leader was finally waking up for battle. Nobody could stop him now. He was ready to tear the place apart. But as Lyle ranted, Timothy made a fatal mistake and dropped his guard. He did not even see the devastating kick to his ribs coming. Agonizing pain exploded as he flew backward. Abe watched in total disbelief. Timothy smashed through the solid wall, flying completely out of the hall. Down in the square, the crowd was still cheering for their champion. Helen looked up in utter confusion as Timothy plummeted toward the ground. But Lyle was not done. He still had 10 seconds of power left. He wondered if the kid could survive this. The countdown kept ticking. By the 9th second, Timothy was falling fast. His strength was completely gone. His consciousness was rapidly slipping away. He could feel his mind fading. As the ground rushed up, he wondered how he had lost so miserably. Suddenly, a loud voice cut through the air, screaming his name from below. It was Melissa and Lindsay. Their faces were pale with panic. They had rushed to his guild, completely ready to flood him with questions. Then things finally clicked for Timothy. He actually owned a guild now. Spotting Helen in the crowd, he waved a quick goodbye before rushing away. Lyle, the man, had claimed he founded his own guild just to protect this city and those he loved, while Timothy was caught up in these thoughts during their free fall. Lyle closed the distance in an instant, sword still tightly gripped in his hand. Gathering the last of his remaining strength, the former corpse collector fought back. He swung his blade wildly, desperately trying to keep his pursuer at bay. Lyle was thrilled. His inner demon only awakened for truly worthy opponents. He had not revealed his terrifying true power to anyone in ages. But unfortunately for both of them, this intense duel was about to reach its end. Lyle unleashed a devastating demonic black flash, sending the sacred sword flying from Timothy's grip. Left completely defenseless, he felt utter despair creep in and admitted aloud that he was no match for Lyle. He had lost this battle. Yet he swore he would survive, and right then, his system chimed in. It confirmed that detonating his own sacred weapon would shield him from the impact. Without wasting a single heartbeat, Timothy commanded his holy sword to detonate. The blade of the seraphim instantly obeyed its master's desperate call. It erupted in a blinding flash right between them, forming a massive protective barrier. Even so, the shockwave slammed hard into Timothy, sending him hurtling down toward the concrete at terrifying speed. At least the blast slowed Lyle down. Timothy crashed violently onto the pavement below, sending cracked debris flying everywhere, dragging himself up with his remaining strength. The boy begged his system armor to bring back his broken seraphim sword. He desperately needed a new weapon to survive. Suddenly, the system flared up, flashing a warning that he needed to escape right this second. He knew that, but running was not an option. He wanted to fight. He needed steel in his hands, and the system offered a solution. 2 epic skills were available for purchase: weapon restoration and quick weapon repair. They cost 90 levels in total, but Timothy bought them. Without hesitation, the system confirmed the transaction, and in just a few seconds, his twin blades manifested right back into his hands, crossing them defiantly. He dared Lyle to bring it on, promising to cool his temper with cold steel. If he could just endure a little longer, victory was still within reach. But hold on, his vision completely blurs, and the entire world begins to spin. Collapsing onto the hard ground, he kept trying to force himself up. It was no use. He ended up lying face down, completely defeated at Lyle's feet. Lyle slowly walked over, gazing down at the exhausted boy for a few quiet moments before telling him it was time to get some proper rest. Sometime later, Timothy woke up screaming from a nightmare, throwing himself upright. He gasped, looking around to find himself safe inside his guild headquarters. Surrounded by his worried comrades, Melissa gently took his hand in hers. She explained that she and Lindsay had only gone out to buy dinner. That was when they saw him falling from the massive tower above. Looking straight into Timothy's eyes and asked how he felt. Timothy stared at her, finally understanding how the girls had arrived in time. Suddenly, Lindsay interrupted them, rushing into the room with wide eyes. She gasped, telling them that everyone had been absolutely worried sick about him. Pointing out his serious injuries, Helen complains that his duel with Lyle went way too far. It literally wrecked the guild headquarters tower, did they even think? He just listens as his friends go on excited rants. He humbly apologizes for making everyone worry so much. But his main question remains, did he actually pass the test? The answer comes straight from Lyle, who suddenly appears in the room. Standing at the doorway, the guild leader announces that the boy passed. Timothy is thrilled, while Lyle reveals that 15 seconds had passed. That was how long he held out before passing out cold. The guild leader admits he put all his skill into those 15 seconds. He points out that Timothy is the first adventurer to survive that long. Better yet, he only walked away with minor injuries, leaving him ecstatic. He almost loses his mind with joy. The condition is officially met. Abe steps in, asking if the master has anything else to say. Lyle admits he acted pretty immaturely, using a legendary skill in a sparring match. His emotions got the best of him, causing Timothy to get hurt. Lyle sincerely regrets how things turned out. Abe, though, is not having it. They wanted to protect the city, but Lyle almost killed him. Abe feels simple remorse is not enough, demanding a proper apology. Lyle lets out a soft chuckle and apologizes to the boy again. He adds that Timothy cleared the first part of the test. Once he recovers his strength, part 2 begins. He is going to start the second part of his test, clearing a dungeon together. Timothy already has a pretty good guess which dungeon it is. Lyle confirms his suspicion, pointing to the underground ruins east of Durham. Out in the desert, adventurers call this the Old Witch's Workshop. This name makes Helen's jaw drop. Can you even blame her? Lyle explains that an incredibly powerful witch once lived inside those ruins. But after her tragic death, monsters completely overran the entire place. Fascinated, Timothy asks what kind of beasts are lurking inside. Lyle looks at him and warns that no one knows their tier. Helen notes that strange magical anomalies have been erupting from the workshop. These strange surges make the local monsters way more aggressive. They are actively attacking merchants traveling to Durham. Lyle chimes in, saying nobody knows where this energy comes from. They only know one thing: the anomalies come from a single beast. A highly dangerous monster has nested deep inside the ruins. Our guild wizards estimate its level is around 300. Timothy is absolutely stunned. Level 300 is no joke. That is way higher than the Desert Cursed. Lyle explains the outer ruins themselves are not dangerous. No explorer has ever reached the absolute depths, but he believes in Timothy. He wants the boy to investigate the Old Witch's Workshop. His task is to hunt down the monster causing these anomalies. Clenching his fist, the guild leader asks if Timothy accepts this mission. His challenge, deep within the crumbling ruins, a massive pendulum starts to swing back and forth. The rhythmic movement lights up a figure sitting in the middle of a colossal library. Suddenly, the shadowy figure stirs. An ancient witch slowly begins to awaken. She opens her eyes, instantly sensing that some snot-nosed kids are trying to break into her private sanctuary once again. Her rage flares, crackling with wild lightning as she prepares to slaughter the intruders. Meanwhile, Timothy recovers from his ordeal and wastes absolutely no time. He heads straight toward the scorching desert east of Durham. determined to finish his quest as fast as humanly possible. After trekking through the shifting sands, the party finally reaches the hidden entrance of the ancient witch's workshop. Peering inside, the companions spot Grim warning signs, skeletons of past adventurers scattered all over the dusty stone floor. Timothy is the first to step down into the gloom. He asks Lindsay if she is absolutely sure about tagging along. She just smiles sweetly and gives him a quick wink. She is 100% confident. Even though she is only a level 10 novice, she wants to help him out, having just secured her official beginner license from the guild. Besides, Lindsay knows exactly why he left their home village in the first place. While Timothy was out cold, Abe filled her in on everything. And she knows he is just too kind of a person for his own good. To keep the villagers safe, he chose exile, now her ultimate dream is to stand by his side and someday match his incredible strength. But Timothy warns her that this workshop is way too dangerous for a level 10 beginner. This is definitely not the place to start her journey. Lindsay immediately flails her arms and loudly protests. After all, Timothy is also just level 10 and he is going. He tries to explain, but she cuts him off, revealing she knows all about his insane hidden skill. Unlike Timothy, she cannot just level up without fighting in brutal battles. To get stronger and raise her rank, she is totally willing to take big risks. Talk about a dangerous way to grind. Timothy still thinks it is incredibly reckless to seal the deal. Lindsay adds that she knows he will protect her if things go south. Timothy sighs and scratches his head, too exhausted to even argue. So he finally gives in. Their lively debate is cut short by Abe, who dryly asks if they are actually going inside today. Timothy decides it is time to move and tells everyone to head down. A bit later, the party reaches the first floor of the dungeon. Helen immediately senses a massive concentration of magical energy radiating from the walls. This is definitely no ordinary ruin. Abe nods in grim agreement. Before they run into whatever is generating that magic, they must level up Timothy fast. If he faces a level 300 monster right now, his level 10 stats will not cut it. Abe points out that raising his level on the way here would have been a lot easier than doing it inside. But after that chaotic desert battle, all the local monsters went into hiding. Suddenly, a strange sound echoes from the dark ahead. What is that? Their conversation is suddenly cut short by their first monster, a level 50 iron warrior. Timothy stares at the bizarre creature. So this is what the local monsters look like. Trust me, this is exactly the kind of monster Timothy needs to level up. They will weaken the metal beast, leaving Timothy to land the killing blow. But as the boy plans his move, the warrior charges ahead at full speed. His friends barely leap out of the way in time. Timothy keeps his distance, staying out of the clash and trusting the plan. Abe calls out to him, telling him not to worry since they are professionals. They are Durham's top adventurers, after all. Right then, Helen joins the offensive. She flanks the Iron Warrior from the opposite side as Abe, ready to strike. Swearing she won't let the beast touch her friend, Helen lunges forward fiercely. She rips off one of the monster's limbs. Abe immediately yells to Timothy. His moment of glory has finally arrived, and Timothy does not wait around. He charges straight into the fray with his weapon ready. Suddenly, just as he closes the gap, the Iron Giant begins to shift. It transforms, threatening to crush the boy entirely. Lindsay watches in horror. She realizes he is in deep trouble and acts without a second thought. Disregarding her own safety, she resolves to defend him with her strongest spell. Unleashing her signature thunderbolt, she darts right past Timothy. She shoves him out of harm's way, charging the metal colossus head-on. Timothy panics when he realizes it is her, but the brave girl presses on. Unfortunately, courage alone cannot make up for her lack of raw power. Her sudden assault is cut short. The monster is simply on another level. Lindsay is sent flying back, but Timothy manages to catch her in time. He quickly thanks her for saving his life as the battle rages on. The mechanical beast shifts once more, morphing into a creepy witch-like doll. It seems to take Timothy's words personally, immediately locking onto his location. The doll launches a sudden strike, but Timothy barely manages to dodge. He mocks the monster, asking how it can miss with such a giant head. But when he attempts his own counterattack, it does absolutely zero damage to the enemy. Talk about a massive reality check. The level difference is just too high. He is completely lost on how to beat it. Helen screams out a hint. If this thing is just a puppet, there has to be an internal core somewhere. Timothy yells back, asking how they can possibly reach it through that armor. Abe grins and says they will just have to break it with brute force. The brave warrior yells at the magic machine to draw its attention. As it turns toward him, another blast tears its remaining arm clean off. Abe immediately leaps onto the robot, tearing the thick metal plates apart. Abe is far stronger than he looks, effortlessly ripping through the thick chest plates. He exposes the pulsing core inside, screaming for the others to strike now. The monster is completely wide open, giving Timothy his perfect opening. He dashes forward with his blade held high, knowing he cannot fail here. With a clean thrust, his sword pierces the core of the mechanical beast. The crystal shatters into a million pieces, and the giant machine collapses. Crashing to the ground as a pile of scrap metal, Timothy finally got exactly what he wanted so badly. 50 levels from the defeated monster were now his. If he can smash just a few more mechanical dolls like this, he will quickly reclaim his original power. Helen points out that the most crucial thing to remember is these are only magical golems. Their weak point is the magical core inside them. Abe adds that because of this core, they can even move, otherwise they are just mindless puppets obeying the will of their master, the creator who breathed life into them using magic. This enemy seems simple enough, but the group is so busy talking they do not notice two more iron warriors creeping up until Lindsay warns them. These new threats are level 50, but with Timothy now at level 60, he can easily handle this duo alone. The boy charges forward,